Chapter 1073. Countless black tentacles rose from the ruins of the palace to the sky. Those who were still in this area were caught by the tentacles and turned into dried corpses. With every breath, hundreds of demis would be devoured. New tentacles kept breaking out of the ground and sweeping across the ground. Nothing could stop these black tentacles, and the buildings collapsed to the ground. The battle had begun. A soldier exuding intense soul points rushed to the sky. "That's the National Protector General," someone shouted. Everyone turned to look, only to see the soldier clasping his hands together and angrily shouting, "Die!" Intense heat swept across the ground. Many dry objects were ignited by the fire elemental energy, giving off intense flames. He turned into a flaming giant and charged towards the countless black tentacles like a meteor. This was most likely his divine skill. Its power had reached its peak. Under everyone's watchful eyes, 7 to 8 black tentacles flew towards the flaming giant and struck him. Instantly, the flames were shattered and fell from the sky. The scattered flames struck the ground, igniting many areas and turning them into a sea of flames. A single strike, and the National Protector General was killed. What kind of terrifying power was this? The readied troops didn't dare to move forward anymore. Even the strongest of them was killed in a single strike. They would only be seeking death if they went forward. Countless combatants fell into despair. The stronger they were, the more they could sense how terrifying the other party was. And this was only the monster's tentacles. What truly caused everyone to tremble was the monster's main body. Its main body still hadn't appeared. People fled in all directions in fright. The chaos had begun. It was like the end of the world. All of a sudden, a solemn voice resounded in the sky. The 4 pillar gods are currently on their way to fight against the evil monster. To avoid being caught in the crossfire, everyone is to retreat from the sovereign district from afar, for blinking sprites of light appeared. The divinities are here. The crowd cheered. The hesitant troops immediately turned around and began to help the crowd quickly retreat. Quite a few people stopped to observe the situation. But the divine decree had already said for everyone to retreat from this area. How could they be disobeyed? The soldiers began to chase the crowd away. At the same time, the 4 pillar gods stood at 4 different points in the sky and unleashed a jet black seal towards the palace. The entire area and the countless tentacles were completely isolated. No one could see what was going on inside anymore. They could only hear a series of powerful explosions and explosions. Thousands of kilometers away from the monarch's district, Zhang Yongho and Boss stood at the top of a building, sensing the minute fluctuations of the battle in the air. "You're really good at manipulating things behind the scenes," Zhang Yongho said. "Yes, we seal the inside. This way, no one will know that the monster is with them." Boss crossed his arms and agreed. They jumped from the roof into a small alley. Yi Fei Li activated the power of the Forgetting River Soul flaying hook, temporarily granting the maid's soul the ability to touch everything and speak. There was a layer of light on the maid's body. This was the unique light emitted by a ghost after it received the power of the divine armament of Huang Quan. It was just like how Yi Fei Li gave the ghost the power to pick up weapons and take revenge. "That's enough." Yi Fei Li gestured to her. The maid sensed herself and found that she could now touch her own body, as well as speak. She then looked at everyone and said, "The king had me wait for you in the secret passage. Once I receive you, I will immediately take you away from that place and head towards the king's location. That was my mission. Unfortunately, after waiting for a while, I suddenly fell unconscious. Now that I think about it, I was most likely killed by someone." Gu Qingshan silently listened and waited for her to finish before asking, "Why did the king give you such a dangerous mission?" "Because I have a divine skill called fearless teleportation. After I choose a location, no matter what, I can directly return to that location with a single thought. Unfortunately, I didn't have the chance to use this divine skill," the maid sighed. She solemnly bowed to Gu Qingshan's group and continued, "Please allow me to return to see my child. He is currently sick, so I have to see him. This way, even if I were to disappear in the end, I wouldn't have any regrets," Yi Fei Li explained. "You can't leave the range of my hook right now, otherwise that thing will immediately notice you. Its proficiency in soul techniques is very high, the maid begged. I beg you, please help me just this once. I'm already dead. I have no other wish. I just want to see my child one more time. Yi Fei looked at Gu Qingshan. Gu Qingshan pondered. The four pillar gods pointed out that our group is evil, but the king sent this woman to come into contact with us. For this woman to be given such a heavy responsibility, she must be a trusted aide of the king, or a hidden figure that no one knows about. In other words, she must have come into contact with many secrets and know a lot of information. This information regarding Calming Soul Country might not even be known by the people of Calming Soul Country. Gu Qingshan looked at the maid soul, only to see that her expression was full of sorrow and despair. Although this was only a soul, tears were still flowing down her cheeks. Gu Qingshan asked, "You're worried about your child, but what about the child's father?" "He abandoned us when I was pregnant," the woman said. "You're raising the child by yourself." "Yes. That's not an easy task. How should I address you?" "My name is Xinya." "Xinya. Nice to meet you. I'm Gu Qingshan. These are my friends." Gu Qingshan introduced everyone to her. "Now, please allow us to follow you to your home. On one hand, to help you see your child. On the other hand, we also need a place to hide ourselves." The maid cried tears of joy and spoke with a trembling voice. "Really? I'm only a ghost right now, but I still want to express my gratitude." She lowered her body, about to kneel down. Gu Qingshan hurriedly helped her up. "There's no need for that. You were killed in order to complete the mission to save us." Gu Qingshan smiled. "Now that you mention it, we actually owe you quite a bit." A secluded corner of the city. The girl called Xian Yu was standing in front of a small house, hesitating. "What's the matter?" Gu Qingshan asked. "He's only 3 years old. I don't know how to face him." Xian Yu was still crying. Hearing that, everyone went silent. What a pitiful child. He didn't have a father, and now he's lost his mother. How will he live from now on? What kind of predicament will he face? Will he be able to survive alone? Lola seemed to have thought of something as her eyelids slowly drooped. A single tear slowly flowed down. Gu Qingshan silently pondered. "It's only been 5 days since I last used the Heaven Sword, so there's at least 5 more days before I can use Chaotic Flow again. Right now, I can't revive her." Gu Qingshan sighed and said, "Let's go, we'll go with you." The girl shook her head, then slowly nodded. She raised her hand to push the door open, but her hand went through the door. Yi Fei said apologetically, "I'm sorry. This ability to materialize ghosts can only last for a few minutes." The girl seemed to sigh in relief and retreated. Gu Qingshan asked, "How long do we have to wait before we can use it again?" 1 hour, so it's only an hour. We can wait that long, but after an hour, it can only last for a few minutes. After all, materializing ghosts isn't a specialized ability. It's only a small trick that comes with a hook. That's a bit troublesome. If she's talking to her child and the time is up, wouldn't we be done for? Everyone was talking at once. Hearing everyone's discussion, Xinya slowly lowered her head. All of a sudden, a low shout came from inside the house. "Mommy!" Xinya didn't care about anything else. She opened her mouth and said something without saying anything, then rushed inside. A single door kept everyone outside, but how could the situation inside be hidden from them? Gu Qingshan released her inner sight to check, only to see that a glass of water on the table had been knocked over. A bottle of medicine had fallen to the ground. A 3-year-old child was lying on the bed. His face was tightly scrunched up from the pain he was suffering from. His condition wasn't very good, a bit severe, but he was strong enough to silently endure the pain, only calling out for mommy when he was in too much pain. Xinya was circling around the child, but she was only a ghost, so no matter what she said or did, the child couldn't hear or feel it. She was so worried that she was crying. "Let's go inside and help him." Yi Fei was about to walk inside. Zhang Youngho stopped her and whispered, "You're a stranger, not even a demi, so don't scare the child." Yi Fei shrugged and asked, "Then what should I do?" Zhang Youngho replied, "Knock him out, then heal him. That's too rough," Yi Fei complained. While watching this, Gu Qingshan suddenly felt a pair of small hands holding her. When she looked down, she saw that it was Lola. "Qingshan," Lola looked at him and whispered, "He's already an orphan." Let's help him, all right? An autumn water clear blue sword manifested behind Gu Qingshan's back and turned into Shanu. Gongzi, I'll go, Shanu volunteered. Gu Qingshan shook her head and said, You've never been a mother before, so you won't be able to experience it, you won't be able to learn it, and there might even be trouble. He patted Yi Fei Li's shoulder. Call Xinya back and give me a strand of her hair. All right. Yi Fei Li called the ghost back, then released the corpse, plucked a strand of hair from the corpse's head, and gave it to Gu Qingshan. Gu Qingshan took the strand and asked Yi Fei Li, Then, can you let me form a connection with Xinya? It's fortunate that you're a cultivator. Your spirit sense is quite strong, so you can barely do it, but won't take long. How long? 10 minutes, that's enough. At this point, Xinya was called back. Gu Qingshan and Xinya talked for a while, asking a few questions about their daily lives. Their conversation was over. Yi Fei Li used the Forgetting River Soul Flaying Hook to connect Gu Qingshan and Xinya's minds. Say something, Gu Qingshan said. Xinya said something. Gu Qingshan nodded, gesturing that she could hear. Xinya stared at him, then suddenly stepped forward and lightly hugged him. Let's begin, Gu Qingshan said. Xinya turned around and stood in front of Gu Qingshan. Gu Qingshan activated Mystery of All Beings Equal and turned into Xinya. He opened the door and entered. Everyone was still standing outside, silently observing the situation inside the room. Noticing his mother's return, the child called out in surprise. Xinya wiped away her tears and smiled brightly. Gu Qingshan also smiled. Whenever Xinya said something, Gu Qingshan would follow suit. The ghost made an expression. Gu Qingshan made the same expression. The ghost made a hugging gesture, and Gu Qingshan hugged the child. At first, it was a bit shaky, but Gu Qingshan quickly adjusted and kept pace with Xinya. Their expressions were almost exactly the same. He was becoming more and more proficient. The ghost reached her hand towards the table. Gu Qingshan picked up the cup. The ghost softly comforted her. Gu Qingshan continued what she was saying. The ghost lowered its head. Gu Qingshan leaned down and kissed the child. At this moment, he was Xinya. Outside the door, no one said anything. Finally, Boss couldn't help but ask, how can he act so well? In human society, he shouldn't have experienced the role of a mother. Lola couldn't hold back her tears, constantly wiping her face with her hands. She muttered, because he's an orphan. Please remember this book's domain name. M. Chapter 1074. Gu Qingshan had a total of 10 minutes. He used 8 minutes to calm the boy down. In the remaining 1.5 minutes, he used a sleep-inducing technique to make the boy fall asleep. Time is up. Gu Qingshan and Xinya's telepathic link was cut off. Everything worked perfectly. There were no loopholes. When he found that he couldn't hear Xinya's voice anymore, he dispelled Mystery of All Beings Equal. Seeing the worry on Xinya's face, Gu Qingshan consoled her. Don't worry. This is only a technique to help him sleep. There's no harm to it. In fact, it'll allow him to rest better and recover faster. Xinya sighed in relief. She reached her hand out and gently placed it on the boy's face. A few moments later, Xinya opened her mouth and silently said something. Yi Fei Li listened carefully, then repeated. She said that she's already dead, so she no longer owes the king anything, but instead owes you a favor. Gu Qingshan smiled. There's no need to be so polite. Even if it was anyone else in your situation, I would still help them. She asked us what our goal in coming here was from the outside world. Tell her that we once lost something here tens of thousands of years ago. Hearing that, Xinya appeared doubtful, but quickly fell into thought as if she recalled something. Everyone else was resting in the room. Boss had already gone to lie down on the sofa like a corpse. Lola had already used Shelter of Infinite Worlds for a long time, so she was also tired, lying on a rocking chair and drinking some stamina drink. Zhang Young-ho stood next to a wall with a map of Calming Soul Country hanging on it, took out a cigarette, looked back at the sleeping child, then begrudgingly put it back down. Thinking of something, Zhang Young-ho suddenly asked, Xinya, since you're already dead, will someone come to search your residence? Being called, Xinya regained her senses and explained to him in a serious manner. She said that she was only a civilian on the surface, Only when the king personally gave her an order would she act. No one knows her true identity, so there shouldn't be any issues. Everyone was surprised. Even the four pillar gods wouldn't have time to investigate a minor character under the king's command. A minor character who had already been killed. Right now, the most important task for the four gods was to quickly appease that monster, think of a way to deceive everyone, and suppress the entire matter. This place is still not safe. Let's rest for a bit and find another place as soon as possible, Gu Qingshan said. Zhang Yongho studied the map on the wall and replied, "Don't worry, I'm looking for it. Why don't you come take a look?" All right. Gu Qingshan was about to walk over. At this time, Yi Feili said, "Qingshan, she asked you to wait a moment." Gu Qingshan stopped walking. Xianya walked forward, looked at him, and silently said something. Yi Feili said, "She said that when she was serving the country, she had done what she needed to do. She only asked the king for one thing, and that was that if anything happened to her, she asked the king to take care of her child. But from the moment of her death until now, it had already been several hours, yet no one had come to take care of her child. Instead, it was you who helped her at this point." Zhang Yongho suddenly clapped his hands. "Someone's coming," he whispered. Lola curiously asked, "How did you know?" "They've touched the air that I set up. You can set up air as well?" "Of course." Gu Qingshan, hurry up and make your decision. I've set up something at the intersection. It'll draw their attention, but it won't take too long. Gu Qingshan thought for a bit, then muttered, "That's strange. Let's wait and see first." A few minutes later, the sound of knocking came from outside the room. Following that, the door was lightly opened. Two people wearing black armor silently entered the room. "Safe, there's no one." The two of them observed their surroundings and whispered. The room was completely normal. Only a 3-year-old child was sleeping. This allowed them to relax a bit. But they didn't know that Gu Qingshan, Zhang Yongho, Yi Feili, Boss, and even Xianya Sol were all standing in a corner of the room with Lola's umbrella in hand. A few people were silently watching them. One of them suddenly sighed. How regretful. Such a loyal and useful subordinate fell into the enemy's hands and was killed right away. It is indeed regretful. Her family is already withered, so we need to erase any traces of her to avoid bringing trouble to His Majesty. That's right. There's also this vile spawn. We can't let him live. How do we deal with it? Same rules. You silence him. I'll set him on fire. Got it. The two of them were about to act. Inexplicably, someone suddenly patted them on the shoulder. They found themselves unable to move. In the next second, they felt a sharp pain and fell to the ground unconscious. Lola put her umbrella away. The group appeared. Gu Qingshan put her sword away and apologized to Xianya. I couldn't kill them just now, because that monster is extremely sensitive to souls and death. As soon as someone died here, it would immediately sense it, Xianya nodded. She seemed to have lost her soul, as if she had lost all signs of life, but also as if she had let go of a heavy burden. It seems the king's actions had completely destroyed the last bit of faith in her heart. Xianya waved her hand at Gu Qingshan. She wants you to come with her, Yi Feili said. Gu Qingshan followed Xianya to a bookshelf. Xianya pointed at a book. Gu Qingshan took the book down. Xianya said something. Page 653, line 9, second sentence. Read it out. Yi Feili repeated. Gu Qingshan opened the book, flipped to that page, and found the sentence. Although he didn't know what was going on, Gu Qingshan knew that Xianya wouldn't harm him. He cleared his throat and read from the book. Examine the covenant from the void of space. A scroll that gave off a golden glow appeared. The scroll hovered in place, giving off light that illuminated Xianya. A few moments later, a sacred voice resounded from the scroll. Frowny face, the royal family had betrayed the oath of old and acted against the successor of the Guardian clan. The oath had been broken. From now on, the guardians of the kingdom will no longer have to fulfill the covenant. Two faint golden chains manifested from Xianya's soul, then broke apart. The golden scroll also turned into sprites of light that slowly faded away. Xianya revealed an expression of relief and calmly told him. She said that her clan had always been the personal protectors of the royal family, possessing various protective divine skills. But when it reached her generation, She fell in love with the prince after she became pregnant with the prince's child. The prince heartlessly abandoned her, but according to the ancient covenant, this was not a part of the oath of old. So she had to continue serving the royal family. Until just now, when the royal family tried to kill this child, the ancient covenant was broken because of that. From now on, even though only her soul remains, both she and her child are free. Hearing that, Gu Qingshan sighed emotionally. He closed the book and sincerely said, "That's fine as well." Xinya nodded, walked to a corner of the room, and pointed at a broken doll. This was a toy for a 1-year-old baby, but now that the child had grown up, he no longer plays with it. Gu Qingshan understood, walked forward, and picked up the doll. Xinya raised her hands and made a ripping motion. Gu Qingshan then tore the doll apart. Clink clank. A silver ring fell from the doll and fell to the ground, giving off a metallic sound. Gu Qingshan waved his hand, summoning the silver ring into his hand. Lines of glowing text appeared on the war god. UI, frowny face, you've obtained the Inner Plane's guardian ring. This was a ring forged specifically to pass on its secrets at the moment of the Inner Plane's destruction. The binding oath on this ring of protection has been broken. You don't have to fulfill any obligations to activate its secrets. The only condition is that you must know the corresponding incantation. Only by chanting the incantation can you activate it. Xinya stared at the silver ring with a complicated look in her eyes. She muttered something. Yi Fei Li then told her, "She wants you to chant this. I shall be fearless." Gu Qingshan held the ring tightly and chanted, "I shall be fearless." As soon as she said so, the silver ring abruptly gave off a blinding holy light that quickly enveloped Gu Qingshan's entire body. The ring had been activated. Chapter 1075. The silver light completely enveloped Gu Qingshan. He stood completely still inside the light, not reacting at all. "What's going on?" Lola anxiously asked. "What's wrong with this ring of yours?" Yi Fei Li abruptly turned around and stared at Xinya. Xinya shook her head and said something. Hearing that, Yi Fei Li told everyone. She said that Gu Qingshan is currently receiving some secrets from the past. "Nothing's wrong." Zhang Yongho coldly stared at Xinya and said, "Humph, why should I believe you? This ring of yours is definitely." Boss waved his hand and cut him off. "Don't worry." Zhang Yongho looked at him. Boss appeared to be a bit tired, as well as a bit sorrowful. "It's fine. He really is trying to understand a few things. If he wants to do something in a world like Calming Soul Country, this is a necessary process," Boss added. "This is a recognition of his identity. Then we can only wait? Let's wait. There's nothing else to do right now anyway." After saying so, Boss returned to the sofa and lay down. Everyone exchanged glances, then focused their gazes on Gu Qingshan again. Gu Qingshan didn't move. Under the illumination of a light, he was clearly very close to everyone, but also unreachable. The moment the ring was activated, Gu Qingshan felt himself being plunged into darkness. A long period of darkness. A solemn voice suddenly resounded in his ears. On the day the stars fell, the kingdom of 10,000 gods ushered in its end. The darkness scattered. Gu Qingshan suddenly saw the stars in the sky, falling straight down to the ground. The ground was groaning. For some unknown reason, Gu Qingshan felt a sense of fear. This fear wasn't because of the falling stars, but rather because of some sort of indescribable terror from the ground. Although Gu Qingshan couldn't see with his eyes, this feeling had directly manifested in his mind, causing him to feel a bone-deep sense of despair and fear. The scene shook. Gu Qingshan found herself standing in a palace. The entire palace was speeding towards the sky, as though something was chasing after it. The palace was filled with fully armored warriors. A man wearing a crown sat on a throne and asked, "How many stars are left in the sky?" Someone reported, "Your Majesty, they're all dead. All dead." Report. A figure flew in from outside the palace and landed in the main hall. This man was covered in wounds, breathing heavily. "There are still a few divinities who haven't died yet. I just saw the God of Knowledge bringing the Starlight Empire's royal family to break through the world barrier and escape into the space vortex, space turbulence." A powerhouse said unwillingly, "How can a deity be like this?" There are countless terrifying monsters in the void turbulence, some of which even a deity can't deal with. Another combatant replied, "It's fine. We still have the Lord of the Eternal Abyss, the greatest above the star crown." He had voluntarily abandoned his human identity and turned into a demon within the abyss. He is the most powerful monster. Everyone fell silent. At the mention of that person, everyone seemed to feel a bit complicated. A desperate scream suddenly resounded from outside. This seemed to be a signal. Death began to spread. The screams of countless living beings gradually filled the void without stopping. The crowned man sighed. It seems the god of death was right. The kingdom of myriad gods is about to be destroyed. Fortunately, we've received the god of life's protection. He looked down and held a golden ring in his hand. Silence reigned. Boom! A resounding sound of impact resounded throughout the entire space. It was completely dark outside the palace. Gu Qingshan could see through the darkness to see the various living beings. Every living being was chasing after them from below with all their might. Their faces were filled with fear, relying on their survival instincts to chase after them. At this point, the crown man's expression changed and shouted, "There's no time. We're going to the space turbulence right now." He put the golden ring on his finger. The ring lit up and gave off a faint golden light that enveloped the entire palace. Inside the golden light, as if it was guided by something, the palace let out a resounding boom, broke a hole in the void of space, and disappeared from this world without a trace. At the very last moment, Gu Qingshan looked behind the palace. All the living beings that were desperately trying to escape froze in midair. Unfortunately, they were still a bit slower than the palace, so they were all dead. Corpses of all shapes and sizes filled the sky, slowly forming a sea of corpses. The scene went dark. Then another. Gu Qingshan found himself still inside the palace. The palace was now sitting on top of a mountain, surrounded by mountains, no longer in the midst of danger. He once again saw the man with the crown on his head. The man was sitting on the throne, covered in blood and barely breathing. He was looking down at the three armored combatants below. "The god of life has fallen from the void, and I shall also enter eternal slumber. You are the most devout followers of the god of life, as well as my most loyal protectors. Today, I shall swear a vow with you here and now. Please protect Calming Soul Country for me, to ensure the continuation of the royal bloodline, and the royal family shall forever protect you. Never harming your descendants," he tossed them out. 3 silver rings flew out and hovered in front of the 5 combatants. "I don't have much time left. If you're willing to abide by the vow, then wear these rings." The 3 combatants had solemn expressions. 3 of them took the rings off and wore them. The crowned man silently watched this and reluctantly displayed a gratified smile. He sat up straight on the throne, exhaled one last breath, and slowly lowered his head. The scene faded. Gu Qingshan found himself back in his small room. He fell into a long silence. The 2 scenes just now contained too much information, so he needed some time to organize them. After a long while, Gu Qingshan turned to Xinya and asked, "What kind of place is the Myriad God Kingdom?" Xinya told him something. Yi Fei Li listened while repeating, "Within the space vortex, it was called the inner plane. At the moment of the inner plane's destruction, countless deities fell with it. Only 7 deities managed to escape that terrifying apocalypse with their divine kingdoms. But the space vortex wasn't safe at all. The 7 deities fought against various unknown monsters for many years, eventually falling one by one. But thanks to the deities' relentless battle, the number of monsters within the space vortex finally decreased by a lot. The deities had long since foreseen their end, so they formed a covenant with the 4 old gods of the space vortex, the 4 pillars of earth, water, fire, and wind, sealing their divine kingdoms away, hoping that the living beings within their divine kingdoms would be able to survive. Originally, their divine kingdoms couldn't even survive within the space vortex, but thanks to the deities' final struggle, they managed to survive until several 10,000 years ago a card has appeared on the royal family's divine altar. When this card appeared, it gave off an intense fluctuation of power that pierced through the seal of the old gods. This power disturbed the nearby space vortex, allowing a terrifying entity to follow this power to find calming soul country. It was an enemy of the god of life, an unknown entity from the void that was comparable to the deities. During the divine war, it was wounded by the combined efforts of the old gods and had yet to fully recover. When the 7 deities were gone and the 4 pillar gods were too busy to deal with anything else, it secretly reappeared. Wanting to find a chance to take revenge, it followed that card into calming soul country. And because the entity on the card wasn't strong enough to fight against this terrifying monster, she couldn't help but give up on the card and left our world by herself. Her card was obtained by that monster, which used a power we couldn't understand to split it into 4 parts, and gave it to the 4 demis traders that had submitted to it, pretending to be deities. As for the entity on the card, before she left, she told the royal family that she would be heading to the 900 million world layers to await the birth of a certain person. Only that person would be able to save her. Hearing this, Gu Qingshan realized something. He tried his best to remain calm and asked, "Did she say her name?" "She did. She used to be called Water God. But to distinguish herself from the 4 pillar gods, as well as to better conceal her identity within the 900 million world layers, she changed her name. Her name was Black Sea." Chapter 1076. Hearing the name Black Sea, Gu Qingshan took a deep breath. "So that's why. If that's the case, everything makes sense now. I have to save her. She's the only hope against the soul shrieker. Thank you for letting me know so many things." He sincerely thanked Xianya. If Xianya hadn't told me of her own accord, I would have had to spend a lot of effort to find out these things. After all, these are the absolute secrets of calming soul country. For example, the end of the inner plane, the fall of the 7 deities, and Black Sea's departure. These aren't secrets that just anyone could learn of. Most likely only the royal family and the guardians of calming soul country would know about them. She said that she wanted to thank you, and that this was only the slightest bit of help that she could offer. Xianya nodded and continued. While listening, Yi Fei Li repeated, "After the 4 deities' propaganda, everyone now believes that after death, their souls will be taken away and brought into the true paradise of heaven. But they don't know that this is all an illusion created by the monster. In reality, after anyone dies, their soul will be devoured by it. The royal family that ruled over this world was no match for the 4 deities, and definitely no match for that terrifying monster. They could only struggle on while at death's door." Gu Qingshan cut off Yi Fei Li and doubtfully asked, "If that monster was so powerful, why didn't it just destroy the royal family?" At the beginning, that monster used a strange method to infiltrate calming soul country. By devouring the law of death of calming soul country and replacing it with itself to successfully infiltrate this world, it controlled the fate of all souls in this world after death. But it wasn't until it became the law of death of this world that it discovered that the royal family had a way to directly destroy calming soul country. Gu Qingshan appeared surprised. If the entire world was destroyed, the law of this world would also be destroyed. Perhaps this monster wouldn't be killed directly, but it would at least be heavily wounded. It had already been wounded by the combined efforts of the deities, so it definitely wouldn't want to be wounded again. Sure enough, Yi Fei Li continued. When the monster discovered this, it was too late for regrets. He could only temporarily acquiesce to this matter and let the royal family continue to exist. That monster had no choice but to support the 4 false gods in order to gain power, but the monster did not dare to go too far against the royal family. Otherwise, if the royal family decided to perish together, it would not end well either. "I understand." Gu Qingshan sighed. Lola looked at him and asked worriedly, "Gu Qingshan, what should we do now?" "Kill those 4 fake gods and take back the card fragments," Gu Qingshan ordered. Zhang Yongho continued, "What about that monster?" Gu Qingshan shook her head and said, "Even the gods couldn't kill it, so naturally we can't either. It's better to hide if we can." Hearing that, Zhang Yongho fell into thought. After a while, he finally spoke up. "There are too many uncertainties in this matter. Those 4 are stronger than all of us, and that terrifying monster had even manifested itself as a part of this world's laws. Do you really think we can hide from it? Gu Qingshan sighed. Of course we can't. So we need to find help, the king? Yes, I don't like him, but with the current situation, we can only cooperate with him. To be honest, someone like him really isn't a good partner to work with. Both of them were hesitant as they spoke. Their gazes fell onto the sleeping child. The child was sleeping soundly. At this point, Xianya told him something else. Yi Fei Li repeated. She said that you must remember a certain thing. Every demi in this world is born with the ability to awaken a divine skill. Some of them might not be powerful, but their divine skills would surpass the limits of their strength and become unstoppable. Furthermore, this generation's king of Calming Soul Country is the strongest of all the previous kings. So she told you not to be careless. Otherwise, you will fail miserably. Gu Qingshan nodded. I understand. I want to ask, does she know what the king's divine skill is? She said that this generation's king's divine skill is called Thousand Incarnations. This divine skill allows the king to borrow the divine skill of every previous king. Gu Qingshan. Zhang Yongho. Truly the strongest king, Lola sincerely commented. Knock, knock, knock. A series of knocks suddenly came from the door. Gu Qingshan turned to Zhang Yongho. Zhang Yongho shook his head, signaling that the traps he set up outside hadn't been triggered, nor did he notice anyone approaching. Gu Qingshan released her inner sight, but also couldn't sense anyone. Knock, knock, knock. The knocks came again. All of a sudden, Zhang Yongho, Yi Fei Li, and Lola couldn't move at all. It was as if they were trapped in a narrow space, unable to even move their arms. Gu Qingshan also felt the space around him contracting. This space was squeezing towards his body, then condensed into an invisible wall, as if preparing to leave only a single place for his body to stay. All of a sudden, Gu Qingshan's eyes seemed to have sensed something and abruptly erupted with an invisible flow of air, directly dispersing the rapidly contracting space. It was effortless. Gu Qingshan was also a bit surprised. From the void of space, another surprised voice resounded. Ah! As soon as this voice resounded, Boss, who was lying on the sofa, had stood up and stood next to Gu Qingshan. This is Lock of Dimensional Gate, a sound-type divine skill that can lock everyone in space. Unable to move, Boss muttered. Is that so? That sounds impressive, Gu Qingshan casually replied. 2 lines of glowing text appeared on the War God UI. As it contains the power of primal chaos, parallel plane, inner plane, sword, earth, water, fire, and wind, your Iris World technique has shattered the divine skill. Lock of Dimensional Gate. Your Iris World technique is still accumulating power. Gu Qingshan's inner sight scanned through and focused. 4 swords manifested behind his back. He wielded the twin swords heaven and earth with both hands. Killing intent erupted. The other party didn't greet him and directly trapped Zhang Yongho, Yi Fei Li, and Lola. This was a test full of malice. If all of us are trapped here, the other party will most likely consider us to be no threat at all, squeeze out all of our value, then kill us. Gu Qingshan looked at the void of space and coldly said, This is the most impolite knocking I've ever heard. If you want to die, come in. He had been angered. If the other party dared to attack, even if Gu Qingshan had to expend the remaining 1 million soul points, he would still be killed on the spot. Seemingly sensing this killing intent, the void of space fell silent. How unexpected! Other than the exiled apostle, there was someone else who could resist my divine skill, a voice muttered to itself in confusion. From the void of space, a man wearing a crown and a luxurious crimson robe walked out. The king of Calming Soul Country. Please forgive my rudeness. After all, I wanted to know who it was that knocked out 2 of my subordinates, the king said apologetically. He then looked at his 2 subordinates who had fainted on the ground and muttered to himself, There are fewer and fewer useful people these days. Gu Qingshan stared at him and found that he couldn't see Xianya's soul. Xianya's complexion was pale, hurriedly trying to say something to Gu Qingshan. But as Yi Fei Li was trapped in a unique space, she couldn't convey her thoughts in time. Gu Qingshan's mind moved and sensed something. Shanu, he shouted. Yes, Gongzi. Shanu's voice came. The autumn water, clear blue, sword flew in front of the bed and abruptly unleashed countless black sword images. Secret art, drawn shadow. There was a crisp dang sound. Something seemed to have been cut apart from the void of space. The sword retracted all the sword phantoms and hovered above the bed, protecting the sleeping child. The Six Paths Great Mountain Sword can break all laws. There shouldn't be any issues with it protecting the child. Seeing this, Xianya sighed in relief. The king's gaze fell onto the sword and scowled. He spoke with a confused tone. "This is so unexpected. She's clearly dead, but you're still protecting her child like this. Is it because you've made some sort of secret agreement with her?" Gu Qingshan replied. "The one who made a vow with her was you, not us. In truth, we're also very surprised. After all, killing a sleeping child isn't something a normal person would do." The king went silent with a flash of anger in his eyes. For a split second, Gu Qingshan felt that he was about to attack. But he didn't attack. "What do you know? This is a bastard child. This is our royal family's business. It has nothing to do with an outsider like you," the king replied. The king turned to Boss and spoke with a relaxed tone. "Greatest above the star crown, you seem to be heavily wounded, but you were still able to resist my divine skill. That's quite unexpected." The king smiled again and looked at the two of them. "Gentlemen, there's no need to worry about such trivial matters. You've already proven your strength just now, so we can sit down and discuss the current situation. Perhaps we can cooperate in some ways." Gu Qingshan and Boss exchanged glances. "That's what we were thinking as well." The two of them spoke at the same time. Before they even finished, Boss had already rushed forward. He flipped to a certain page in his book, grabbed it with one hand, and quickly called out something. Gu Qingshan was nowhere to be seen. The king appeared mocking and was about to say something, but his expression changed. He found that he had been sealed. The lock of the dimensional gate. "This was a divine skill that I borrowed from the previous king, but I've been sealed." From the void of space, an excited voice resounded. "Xiao, xiao, xiao." In that split second, Gu Qingshan descended from above. A simple-looking sword covered in violent arcs of lightning slashed straight towards the king's neck. Please remember this book's domain name. M. Chapter 1077. Seeing the arc of lightning on the Earth Sword, the king's expression changed. This strike wasn't particularly powerful, but gave him a sense of extreme danger. The king abruptly opened his mouth and breathed out a mouthful of black mist towards the sword. It was Gu Qingshan who attacked first, but the king's attack was several times faster than his. This was the difference in strength. In that split second, Gu Qingshan's sword continued to descend without hesitation. Boss had reached a suitable distance to cast a spell and shouted, "Saint Spirit's protection." The book in his hand began to tremble. In front of Gu Qingshan, an unknown multi-horn monster was summoned by Boss. The monster opened its mouth and swallowed the black mist. The monster screamed in pain and disappeared without a trace. With the help of Boss's summoned monster, Gu Qingshan didn't even need to think about dodging. He only used forward / lightning thaumaturgy, dream jolt. As soon as the king was struck, he couldn't move anymore. Gu Qingshan swung his sword a second time, cutting off the king's arms and legs. At this point, Boss abruptly shouted, "Retreat." Gu Qingshan blinked and disappeared. At the very next moment, another king appeared from the void of space, reaching his hand towards where Gu Qingshan originally stood. A black crack in space appeared on his hand, turning everything around him into nothingness. It's easy to imagine that if this strike landed on Gu Qingshan, he would have been smashed to pieces. Fortunately, Gu Qingshan had already dodged. The second king didn't chase after him. He descended and fused with the first king. The king's arms and legs returned to normal. Seeing this, Gu Qingshan was surprised, but didn't waste any time. He appeared next to Zhang Yongho, swinging his sword to destroy the dimensional lock that imprisoned Zhang Yongho's group. Lola disappeared without a trace. Yifei Li and Zhang Yongho both reached their hands into the void of space and also disappeared. In front of them, the king looked at them with great interest. "Although you're not strong, you all have pretty good special abilities." The king smiled and deliberately sighed. "But regrettably, The first strike was your only chance. Why didn't you just kill me? I guess you've already understood the rules of death in this world. Once someone dies, the monster will immediately sense it. In its rage, it will immediately destroy this place, right? Boss continued, not only that, I just saw you use the divine skill, soul substitution. The so-called soul substitution is to allow another soul to reside in your body through some harsh conditions. This way, when you are about to be killed, another soul will die in your place, and you will be safe. Gu Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. The king nodded indifferently and said, correct. I know you said it for your companions to hear, but it doesn't mean anything. Why? Boss asked. Because I've collected a lot of people's souls and placed them in my body, I now have a total of 999 lives. The king looked at the two of them, wanting to see their expressions of despair. But he was disappointed. The two of them were expressionless. The king continued, you see, you don't even have the courage to kill me, and you can't kill me either. But if I want to kill you, I can do it right away without any hesitation. How impressive, Gu Qingshan praised. The king clasped his hand behind his back. The reason why I haven't used my full power yet is because I don't want to cause too much of a commotion and draw those guys here. You're being so careful. You must have some sort of plan, Gu Qingshan said. Of course, I need you people to serve me, the king continued. Remember, answer me after you've thought it through. Otherwise, the next time I attack, I'll kill you and throw your souls to that monster to eat. Gu Qingshan and Boss exchanged glances. Gu Qingshan put her sword away and cleared her throat. You're the king. You have countless people working for you. Why do you need us specifically to serve you? The king replied. There's no harm in saying it, because everyone born in this world has the God of Life's brand in their souls. Only the royal family doesn't have it due to their unique status, the God of Life soul brand. Indeed, when the God of Life was still alive, this was the method she used to protect living beings. But now that the God of Life has passed away, and that monster has been fighting against the God of Life for countless years, it's extremely sensitive to the God of Life's brand and has a way to sense it. What does that have to do with us? Gu Qingshan asked. The king lowered his voice and hurriedly said, do you still not understand? Only you can escape from its surveillance. Only you can do that in this world. I need people like you to work for me. Gu Qingshan nodded. So that's why. He slowly said, no wonder you sent Xianya to receive us before. This statement was a bit strange. But Xianya managed to react. Her body trembled. The king also put away his expression, pursed his lips, and stared straight into Gu Qingshan's eyes. What are you trying to say? The king asked. Gu Qingshan continued. At the time, the monster and the four deities had to think of a way to portray Boss as a vicious traitor, while also trying to kill us while trying to cover it up. That was when they were in a state of high tension. Because of that, as soon as Xianya appeared, the monster didn't care what she was doing in the secret passage and immediately sent someone to kill her, and in the process of saving us. You even sacrificed your own subordinate. This would naturally make us feel apologetic and feel that you're a person worth befriending. You must have thought that we would pass through Xianya's body and quickly enter the door behind the passage. I'm guessing that there's a single-use warp device behind that door. We would be transported to the place you said and meet you. You would feel sorrow for Xianya's sacrifice, while we would feel guilty and become your power, helping you accomplish certain things as compensation. Gu Qingshan sighed and said, poor Xianya. She thought that her warp divine skill would be of great use, not knowing that her only use was to show us how much you wanted to help us through her death. All was silent. Xianya's soul covered her mouth as tears silently flowed. The king looked at Gu Qingshan strangely, as if re-evaluating him. Everything was going according to the king's plan, until Gu Qingshan's group saw Xianya's body in the secret passage. Gu Qingshan's judgment and choice had completely surpassed the king's expectations. From that moment on, a new change took place. The king pondered briefly before asking, please forgive me, this one. What is your name? Gu Qingshan, the king appeared interested and said, you're a smart person. I like people like you. I'm sorry, but I don't like you, Gu Qingshan replied. The king waved his hand dismissively and said, you're too weak, but your unique abilities are quite impressive. combined with your intelligence, I finally feel like I've gained something. What do you want us to do? Gu Shan curiously asked. The place that the god of life left behind is not a place a single person can enter by themselves, and if I bring others there, the monster will sense the mark on their bodies. The king abruptly stopped. He took out a scroll from his chest and said, "First sign this covenant to swear your loyalty to me. Then we'll discuss further, but we don't want to swear our loyalty to you," Boss said. The king laughed. "Don't force me to use my full strength." He slowly raised his tone. "I guarantee that before you die, I will beg that monster to let me torture you to my heart's content before letting it consume your souls. If you're a bunch of fools who aren't afraid of death, then die. If you still understand respect, then accept this guardian covenant from me. I guarantee to treat you well from now on, just like how I treat every one of my subordinates." Gu Shan cleared her throat and asked, "When you say well, do you mean like Shinya?" The king's expression slowly turned grim. "State your choice," he roared in a low voice. Gu Shan looked at Boss. "Are you afraid?" he asked. "I'm very afraid," Boss replied. "Then we yes, submit." Gu Shan looked at the king again and sighed helplessly. "We've decided to submit." The king's lips curled up into a half-mocking, half-triumphant smile. But the two people in front of him disappeared. The king scanned around and found nothing. With just that, he smirked and raised his hands. But before he could unleash his technique, a soul-stirring moan resounded first. Instantly, a bullet appeared between the king's eyebrows and pierced through. The technique was interrupted. Blood splattered everywhere. The king collapsed. But the other king stood up and spoke. "What a foolish move. Even if you kill me, the monster will still come here due to the law of death. Not even divinities are a match for it, not to mention, I have over 900 souls as my substitute. No matter what you do, you won't be able to kill me." His presence abruptly rose, causing the entire room to feel like it was about to collapse. No matter where they hid, in the face of such overwhelming power, they could only be crushed. The king shouted in a low voice, "It seems I've suppressed my power too much, causing you to have some sort of unrealistic hope. Very well, now all of you will suffer my wrath." Someone suddenly tapped him on the shoulder. The king felt his whole body convulse, and he couldn't move anymore. He couldn't say anything else. From the void of space, a hook-like weapon lightly tapped his body, then abruptly pulled. Several hundred illusory figures were pulled away. At the same time, the king felt a sharp pain in his chest. He looked down, only to see a long scepter piercing through his body. For no reason at all, he felt as if his entire soul was trembling. This scepter, what exactly is it? Gu Shan silently appeared. He held the horned skull on top of the scepter and casually said, "Regarding the matter of death, I actually have a bit of authority." Chapter 1078. The apostle was indeed heavily wounded. The one called Gu Shan wasn't even worth mentioning. The king understood very well that in the battle just now, he was the strongest, able to easily crush everyone here. There was no doubt about this. He was still holding back, afraid that he would erupt with too much power and kill everyone here. If that happened, it would definitely draw the attention of that monster. But the battle ended just as quickly as it started. The king laid on the ground, unable to regain his composure. Originally, he was prepared to use his power to intimidate these people and force them to kneel in front of him. But then, how did I end up like this? The king couldn't accept this result. The scepter stabbed into his chest, and the intense pain reminded him that everything was real. An unprecedented sense of fear gripped the king's heart. This was the instinctive fear of a living being facing the judgment of termination, being completely dominated by life and death. Not even the soul could resist. Some people would cry, beg, or do whatever they could to survive at such a time. But others were different. The king glared at Gu Shan and roared in a frenzy. "Come, kill me if you can. I am the god of life's divine kingdom manager, the servant of God, the king of calming soul country. How could I fear death?" Gu Shan looked at him with a hint of praise in her eyes. This king does have some merits after all. Gu Qingshan wielded the scepter in one hand and razor index finger in the other, slowly shaking it. "You're mistaken," Gu Qingshan said. "I don't want to kill you," the king froze. "It's true," Gu Qingshan continued. "We won't kill you. You have to keep that in mind," the king slowly sighed, feeling like his heroic act just now was for a blind person to see. But he couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. If I could survive, that would naturally be a good thing. Seeing his emotions changing a bit, Gu Qingshan continued. "That, in all honesty, we still have to thank me?" The king was stunned. His mouth opened and closed, but he did not know what to say. Gu Qingshan said sincerely, "You see, you found someone to pass a note to us, telling us to be vigilant in advance, and you had someone wait for us in the secret passage, pointing out the escape route for us. Although we used other methods to leave in the end, you really did all these things for us. No matter what methods you use to deal with your subordinates, you can't deny this fact. The reason why we fought with you just now was to show that we don't want to become your subjects. That's all." The king coldly said. "Do you think I will believe your words?" Gu Qingshan didn't mind at all. "Whether you believe me or not, it doesn't matter, because I only have one thing to ask you. After I ask, we'll pretend this never happened. You can continue to be your king. We'll take what we need to take and leave Calming Soul Country. What do you want?" "Information. About that monster and the four gods. We want all of their information." The king was a little surprised. "You don't want anything else?" He tried probing. "No, I only want information about that monster and the four gods," Gu Qingshan straightforwardly replied. "What do you want?" "Kill them. I want their cards." The king appeared contemplative. "Cards? So, the reason they came here was for the fragments of the cards on the four gods." The king appeared doubtful and asked, "Don't you covet the wealth and authority of Calming Soul Country?" Gu Qingshan cleared his throat and appeared a bit embarrassed. "To be honest, this place of yours is too poor. Even that monster almost cried from excitement when he saw a mere soul artifact. So there really isn't anything that's worth our attention." The king froze again. In his long life, this was the day that he had suffered the most blows. But at the same time, he felt strangely relaxed. If the other party didn't covet Calming Soul Country, I would have a chance to survive. Speaking of which, that monster really did collect soul artifacts in a frenzy. But soul artifacts were incredibly precious, and Calming Soul Country didn't have many of them, so it had basically taken all of them. The king coldly laughed. "You think we're poor? But how would you know? We were originally so rich that our kingdom had a total of 12 guardian soul artifacts, but all of them were taken away by that monster." Gu Qingshan stared at him with a sympathetic expression. The king's sneer slowly froze. Gu Qingshan's attitude made him feel a bit uncertain. "Ah, Lola, come," Gu Qingshan said. "Yes, master." Lola ran over, flipped the backpack upside down, and shook it. Clatter, clatter. A large number of treasures poured out from the backpack, slowly piling up next to the king. They gave off a mysterious fluctuation of power that anyone could easily tell that they were all priceless treasures of the 900 million world layers. Soul artifacts. All of them were soul artifacts. From a rough count, there were at least a few hundred of them. The king opened his eyes wide, unable to accept what was happening in front of him. If it weren't for the pain coming from his chest, he would have thought that he was dreaming. The king opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but felt like he had nothing to say. "I was just talking about the 12 soul artifacts." "How pitiful." Gu Qingshan glanced at him and casually told him, "A word of advice. Staying in a backwater place for too long will affect your perspective." The king felt like he was just punched in the chest. He closed his eyes, then abruptly opened them again, feeling a burning sensation in his heart. "Who dares to talk to me like that?" And the other party's soul artifacts are piled up all over the ground, so they have the right to talk to me like that. Damn it. The king couldn't help but shout. "Wealth is only one aspect. I've already told you about that matter before. I don't believe you wouldn't covet it." "What matter?" Gu Qingshan asked. "Don't you want to know the god of life's secret?" Gu Qingshan waved her hand dismissively and scoffed. "If even the divinities themselves couldn't kill that monster, then the divinity's secret wouldn't be of any help to me. Not to mention, when it comes to secrets, the more you know, the more troublesome it is, so please don't tell us." The king froze again, then continued. "In front of that monster, you won't be able to escape. Only the god of life's ruin. Dash. How shallow." Gu Qingshan sighed and muttered. These words successfully incited the king's anger. "Do you really think you can deal with that monster?" he loudly mocked. Gu Qingshan cracked her neck with a helpless expression on her face, as if she was a newbie who didn't understand anything. She clapped her hands. Zhang Yongho walked forward, took out a long, glowing metal cannon barrel, and patted it on the king's face. "Can you sense its power?" Zhang Yongho softly asked. The cold metallic sensation made the king shut his mouth. The anger in his heart was instantly extinguished. As the ruler of a country, he still had some sense in front of such a powerful weapon. This technological weapon was capable of destroying an entire world. If Calming Soul Country was destroyed, the monster would naturally be heavily injured. This way, even if they couldn't kill the monster, they would at least have enough time to escape. They even have such a weapon. The king felt like he had nowhere to rest his heart, feeling utterly useless. Even when he was stabbed by the scepter and thought he was about to die, he didn't feel this bad. Of course, he didn't know that this was a treasure Lola found at the edge of the unending abyss of broken worlds. For the sake of touching this weapon, Lola had even broken her promise to never touch anything. Even assault pistols had to call it Cannon Bro when they saw this weapon. This was the only one of its kind. Gu Qingshan waved her hand. Zhang Yongho put Cannon Brother away and retreated. Gu Qingshan cleared her throat and told the king, "Very well. Give me the 4 items you've collected over the past few years. We'll be even and even, really?" The king said, then sneaked a glance at the others. The others didn't seem to have any objections. The little girl tossed out a bunch of soul artifacts, then ignored them. The man came over to show off the world-destroying weapon, stood back up, took out a cigarette, then sighed and put it away. Clearly, he was addicted to smoking. Everyone ignored the soul artifacts on the ground. Damn it, those are soul artifacts that even that monster would go crazy over. The king slowly regained his senses. No wonder the one called Gu Qingshan just now said that Calming Soul Country was a place of poverty. If that's the case, then Calming Soul Country really was poor. Even that terrifying monster was nothing but a pauper in front of them. What the hell? What's going on with these people? Could it be that besides me, no one else in this room cares about the wealth of Calming Soul Country? Not even the ruin left behind by the god of life could attract their attention. That's a miracle. The king felt himself being unable to calm down. This was the same feeling as a bandit who'd gone through countless hardships to steal a huge amount of treasure, only to be discovered by the enemy at the very last moment, forcing him to engage in a battle of life and death with the enemy. In the end, he was defeated by the enemy and was beaten to the ground. Right at this moment, the enemy suddenly said that they didn't want his treasures, pointing out that they were all trash. Trash that wasn't even worth mentioning. The enemy only had a single request. They forced me to tell them whether or not the weather is good today, whether or not it's going to rain. Whether or not it's going to rain. That's right, it's only for trivial matters like this. The king felt his eyes becoming a bit moist. He stared straight at Gu Qingshan and spoke in a low voice. "Let me confirm one more time. If I tell you the information you want to know, will you let me go?" Gu Qingshan replied, "Of course, we can sign a covenant. I hope that you will tell me the information you want seriously and not lie about it." The king didn't say anything. He reached his hand out to hold up a scroll. Gu Qingshan glanced at the scroll, casually took it, and gave it to Lola. After reading it, Lola gave it to Boss. Boss also nodded and gave it back to Gu Qingshan. "No issues," Lola replied. "It's a very strict scroll," Boss commented. "Very well." Gu Qingshan opened the scroll and wrote down the terms of the covenant. "As long as the king provides me with true information, both sides will not invade each other." He cut his finger and let his blood drip onto the covenant. The scroll was then given to the king. The king did the same. The scroll glowed with a bright light. "There," Gu Qingshan said. The king felt relieved. From now on, as long as the information I give them is true, they won't be able to take my life anymore. However, seeing how nonchalant Gu Qingshan was, The king couldn't help but feel a bit speechless. The king's thoughts quickly turned. I don't have anyone else I can use right now. Calming Soul Country had always been sealed off, aside from the royal family. Everyone else was being closely watched by the monsters. These people were the only ones who appeared here by accident. They were the only ones in the entire Calming Soul Country that the monsters wouldn't notice. Although, these people weren't particularly strong, but their abilities were unique. Rich, powerful equipment. Their leader's brain was enough. In other words, they were the only hope. The hope to explore the ruins. The king took a deep breath, then took out a crystal. All the information related to the 4 deities is in here. Very well. Gu Shan received the crystal. The covenant scroll was burnt to ash. The covenant was completed. From now on, neither side would be able to harm the other. Gu Shan pulled the Devil King Warden rod out of the other party's chest. My apologies, he spoke with an apologetic tone. The king clutched his chest and slowly stood up. If it weren't for the unique power of the scepter, this wound wouldn't have been anything to him at all. The king hesitated a bit, then made up his mind. I have another matter that I need to establish a covenant with you. What is it? I need you to come with me to explore the God of Life's ruins. No, this matter has nothing to do with us. We won't waste our energy on such a thing. Gu Shan shook her head. The king went silent briefly, then asked, Didn't you want to deal with the 4 deities? That's right. If you help me explore the ruins, in exchange, I will help you deal with the 4 deities. After all, they're also my enemies. If that's the case, it's not like we can't negotiate. If you're willing to pay for everything, we'll spend some time to seriously consider it. Money isn't an issue. I'll be in the royal palace. If you're willing to cooperate with me to explore the ruins, please come find me with this. The king gave a teleportation scroll to Gu Shan, stared at him for a long time, then disappeared. The room returned to silence. No one said anything. After a while, Lola finally couldn't help but ask, Who can tell me what exactly happened? What is it? Jang Young-ho asked. This king clearly came to us with killing intent, didn't he? If we didn't submit, he would have killed us. There's no doubt about that. But when he left, he wasn't like that. What do you think? He gave us the information we needed, was willing to pay everything to invite us to explore the god's ruins, and promised to establish a covenant to help us deal with the 4 deities. Did he suddenly go crazy? He didn't go crazy. He just ran into a real swindler, saying so. Jang Young-ho took a pack of cigarettes and left the room. It should be safe for now. At least one of the forces of this world wouldn't try to deal with us anymore, while the other side is still busy trying to cover up the truth about the monster. I can go out and have a smoke. Chapter 1079. What are we going to do now? Yi Fei Li asked. Rest, Gu Shan replied. Yi Fei Li sighed in relief, took out the game console from her chest pocket, and said, That's great. I'm currently at the hardest part of the game. I was just thinking about how I wouldn't be able to continue if I died today. He found a chair and sat down on it. Turn it on. Battle. Gu Shan shook her head speechlessly. Lola smiled. Gu Shan, what do you think of me calling you master just now? Gu Shan stroked her head and praised. Very good. You and I work well together. Lola felt happy. Are we really going to help the king explore the ruins? She asked. I want to hear Boss's opinion on this, Gu Shan replied. Boss had already returned to the sofa and laid down like a corpse. Hearing Gu Shan's words, he closed his eyes and replied, The God of Life is one of the very few deities who managed to escape from the inner plane. She's powerful and knows many secrets, so it's good to take a look. Do you have any thoughts? Gu Shan asked. I don't have any thoughts, but I'm guessing that the Soul Shrieker is still searching for us. Before we leave, it will be helpful for us to understand a bit more about the Age of Old and come up with some countermeasures, Boss replied. Gu Shan thought for a bit, then it's decided we're going to take a look at the God of Life's ruins. He then waved to Xianya, who was hovering in the air, signaling her to come over. In terms of the law of contracts, a 3-year-old child doesn't have the ability to sign a contract on his own, but as his mother, you're his direct blood relative, so you can help him sign a few contracts. Gu Shan sincerely said, I'm now officially inviting you and your child to join us. Once you join us, you'll be on my side. I've just signed a rather vague contract with the king. He's very concerned about the issue of life and death because he's afraid of death, but he doesn't know that this problem is mutual. Although we can't hurt him, he can't hurt anyone in my party either. If anyone from the royal family approaches you with malicious intent, they will immediately be punished by the contract. So hurry up and make your decision." Xinya was overjoyed and nodded repeatedly. She said she would. Yi Feili repeated without raising her head. Gu Qing replied, "Then it's settled. You must personally say that you and your child are willing to join the Blade Edge Pledge." Blade Edge Oath? Zhang Yongho's voice sounded. He had just closed the door and entered from outside. "Yes, I set up the contract between the royal family and the Blade Edge Oath." Gu Qing continued to explain. "The Blade Edge Oath is a group formed by Barry and Kitty's group, so they have all the laws of contract in place. So there shouldn't be any issues." Zhang Yongho nodded and sighed. "This way, the royal family wouldn't dare to act again." "You've truly protected her and her child without making a single sound." At this point, Xinya had already begun to speak. "I'm willing to join the Blade Edge Oath," she silently said. Following her chant, two faint lights descended from the void of space, each enveloping Xinya and her child. This was the power of the contract. Gu Qing tapped her inventory bag, took out a formation plate, and began to arrange a formation on the sleeping child. "To avoid unnecessary trouble, I will use a spirit energy cleansing formation to keep your child asleep. This will be a process of awakening his potential, which will only be beneficial to him. I will also arrange the corresponding defensive formations for the next few days. He will remain asleep until I resurrect you. Once you're resurrected, you will be able to meet him in person." Hearing this, Xinya opened her eyes wide. Her mouth slightly opened in shock. "That's right. Don't be surprised. I can resurrect you," Gu Qing said. At another location, the king had returned to the royal palace. He silently sat on his throne, thinking about the recent events. "Father, did everything go smoothly?" A tall and handsome man walked up to the throne and asked. "Not really. The only thing we can do now is to silently wait," the king replied. "Father, how did the matter with the guardian go?" the prince asked. "She's dead. Unfortunately, her child is still alive. Find a few people to keep an eye on that place. As soon as the people in the room leave, go in and kill that child with your own hands." The handsome prince muttered a few words, seemingly wanting to say something. The king's gaze turned sharp and solemnly spoke. "You must understand, once the royal bloodline and guardian bloodline are combined, there will be two consequences. The first is that the child won't be able to live past the age of 3, and the second is that the child will absorb the power of 2 members of the royal family and quickly evolve into a new divine skill. For the past 3 years, I've been waiting for that child to die, but he lived past the age of 3. The king grabbed the prince and shouted, "Right now, the only ones who have the royal bloodline are you, me, and that child. Do you want your power to be absorbed by him while you slowly become a cripple?" "No, I don't want to," the prince fearfully replied. The king wanted to say something else, but his expression changed. He let go of the prince and pushed him away. The king squeezed out a smile and spoke to the void of space not too far away. "Esteemed guest, I assume you have a plan?" In the middle of the royal palace, a warp formation slowly manifested. Gu Qingshan's group appeared in the palace. "That's right, we've decided to help you explore the ruins in exchange for your help in killing the 4 deities," Gu Qingshan said. The king laughed and stood up. "Please come with me. After we've signed the contract, we'll go to the ruins." "Very well, please," Gu Qingshan replied. The king stepped down from the platform and glanced at the prince one last time. Hurry up and do this." The king sent his voice. "Yes." The prince nodded, turned around, and left the palace. The king then led the group in another direction. He led Gu Qingshan's group past palace after palace, through various mechanisms, secret passages, and finally underground, stopping in a sealed room. "How about we sign the contract first?" the king smiled and asked. "I only have one question," Gu Qingshan said. "Please go ahead. According to our previous contract, we can no longer harm each other, but since we're here to help you explore the ruins, we can't just go in empty-handed. During the exploration, everything you know, as well as the information you've just obtained, must be shared with us." The king thought for a bit, then nodded. "Very well, then. It's a pleasure working with you." Gu Qing smiled. Both sides quickly signed a contract. The king's heart was at ease. Sharing information is only a small matter. The treasure left behind by the god of life is the most important. Although he knew that the other party was wealthy, the fact that the other party didn't want anything at all was completely out of his expectations. Of course, he agreed to this without any hesitation. Due to the contract, both sides couldn't harm each other. After entering the ruins, both sides would have different things to pursue. There was no conflict. This was the best foundation for cooperation. "Please follow me," the king smiled. He led the group to the innermost part of the room. The king cut his palm and smeared his blood on the wall. As the wall sensed his blood, it let out a rumbling noise and slowly parted. Soon enough, a large bronze gate appeared in front of everyone. This gate was completely bare without anything on it, but it gave off a thick stench of blood. A sense of vicissitudes of life arose from the bottom of everyone's heart. "This doesn't feel good," Jang Young-ho said uncomfortably. "I feel the same," boss said. The bronze gate was silent, but at the same time, it felt like it was constantly giving off billions of faint cries and screams. The king's voice followed. "Since the age of immemorial, this gate has been sealing something inside. I don't know what it is, but since this place was left behind by the god of life, it must be hiding great benefits." Gu Qing asked, "Didn't your ancestors pass down any teachings?" The king didn't want to say it, but he felt a sense of danger. This is the power of the contract. I have to tell him. Otherwise, the contract will hurt me. The king couldn't help but tell her, "This gate is related to a secret of the old gods, a phrase passed down from our ancestors. This gate can only be opened when the royal family is in danger, and it can only be opened once without a second chance. That's why we must do everything we can." Gu Qing observed this large bronze gate and replied, "No problem." Chapter 1080. The bronze door closed behind them. It was completely dark. Nothing could be seen around them. Their group followed the passage and continued forward. "Do you not know anything about this ruin at all?" Gu Qing asked. "The secrets of our race that have been passed down since ancient times are sealed in our minds. Only when we reach the corresponding location in the ruin would the seal be undone, and we would be able to learn the relevant information," the king replied. Gu Qing praised. What an excellent method to prevent secrets from being accidentally revealed. He wasn't worried that the king would lie at all. "I've already given up on all possible gains, only asking for information. According to the contract, the king must tell me anything he knows." The dark passage was very long. After flying for a long while, they finally slowed down. There was a cliff in front of them. Outside the cliff was a torrential wind, mixed with a bone-chilling coldness, emerging from the depths of the ground, whistling straight up into the darkness where the top could not be seen. Numerous sky-reaching pillars stood on the other side of the cliff, displaying a sense of terror to the group. Countless corpses were fastened to the pillars. Or rather, the pillars were made from corpses. There were all kinds of mysterious corpses. Densely packed insect carapaces. Human corpses that were hugging each other. Beasts that were frozen in place. Strange and mysterious abyssal monsters. Too many to count. Gu Qing even saw a creature that completely belonged to the legends of cultivation. A sky dragon. The sky dragon coiled around the pillars. Its gigantic body was grayish-white, almost like some sort of lifeless specimen. These pillars stood in the bottomless darkness, leading to the endless void. Above and below, endless. This scene deeply shocked everyone. The king held his forehead with his hand and moaned in pain. He endured the pain and muttered, I can sense a certain secret. Its seal is about to be undone. Wait a moment." Everyone stood still and waited. Gu Qing said, "Lola, you need to put on your armor." Lola was surprised. She first put on the bramble bird sovereign armor, then walked up to Gu Qing and took out a cube of ice about the size of her palm. "What is this?" Gu Qing asked curiously. Lola had a mysterious look on her face. Instead of answering directly, she used telepathy to communicate with Lucian. Do you still remember when we were outside the broken abyss of the broken world? I said that there was something more powerful than the king's armor approaching us from the vortex, and I had to get it. I remember we couldn't resist the temptation at that time. We still got it in the end, Gu Qingshan said. It's this thing. I haven't been able to figure out its benefits, but I feel that it's definitely better than all of my armor. Try it out, Lola said. She handed the ice to Gu Qingshan. It was cold to the touch. Gu Qingshan held the ice cube and found that it was a crystal-clear piece of ice. There was a stream of flowing water in it. She didn't know if it was water or something else, but it kept flowing. Lines of glowing text quickly appeared on the war god UI, frowny face elemental defense, Song of Night, the personal armor of the elemental fairy king, embrace and praise of the frozen eternal night and winds of chaotic tribulation. Description: this is a lost and incomplete divine armor. You are unable to use its complete properties. Description: this is a divine armament. You must communicate with the artifact spirit in order to learn its corresponding properties. Special note: this armor's artifact spirit had disappeared countless years ago, but the war god UI has preserved the relevant records of this armor. You'll be able to learn the following properties: Song of Frozen Ice. Whenever an enemy's attack comes into contact with this armor, their attack speed will be reduced by 3% until they are completely frozen, unusable. Praise of Eternal Night. At nightfall, your defense will be increased by 3 times. Song of the Frozen Wind. Whenever you kill an enemy, all of their soul power will be infused into your weapon to increase the power of your next attack. Unusable. Praise of the Winds of Chaotic Tribulation. The winds of chaotic tribulation that surround you will completely nullify an enemy's attack. Once per day, Gu Qingshan's eyes were a bit dazzled and asked, War God UI, why are there 2 abilities that I can't use? Ting. After a clear chime, the war god UI replied, because this armor has been heavily damaged, half of its abilities are unusable, but you now have 2 types of praises. That is more than enough. As soon as it said so, the block of ice in Gu Qingshan's hand broke apart and turned invisible. Lines of glowing text appeared on the war god UI, frowny face time determination. The current state is nighttime. Praise of Eternal Night and Praise of the Winds of Chaotic Tribulation have been activated at the same time. Any enemy attack against you will be nullified by the armor, a total of 3 times. Gu Qingshan felt a faint gust of wind brushing past her body. It was a formless armor. TCH, that's powerful. He couldn't help but look at Lola. At this point, Lola had taken out 3 sets of armor and gave them to Zhang Yongho, Yi Fei Li, and Boss respectively. The armor she carried with her could be considered the most powerful in the entire 900 million world layers. Everyone thanked her and put on the armor. Yi Fei Li sighed emotionally. Normally, according to the rules of the game, we have to kill all the monsters in order to receive the reward, but we've already obtained such powerful armors before the battle. He was wearing a bright red armor with a pair of illusionary wings hovering behind his back, giving him a demonic appearance. Lola giggled. I don't know how to fight, so I'll have to rely on you to protect me from now on. Of course, Your Majesty, Yi Fei Li replied. At this point, the king had already opened his eyes, silently looking at the forest of corpse pillars in front of him, and said, I know how to get there. He walked to the edge of the cliff, knelt down in front of a broken rock, and chanted the god of life's prayer. A while later, the broken rock began to tremble. Outside of the cliff, a floating stone slab appeared out of thin air. The king stood up and said, We must stand on the stone slab. It will take us past this forest of corpses. Remember, do not release any power, otherwise, unknown monsters might be drawn here. Everyone nodded. Lola curiously asked, What would happen if I used power? The king took out a small, intricate box from his chest pocket and threw it towards the faraway forest of corpses. As the box hit one of the corpse pillars, it broke apart, revealing a scroll that gave off magical fluctuations inside. Yeah, billions of screams. All the corpse pillars screamed in pain. Before anyone could see what was going on, the scroll had already disappeared into the air in pieces. All the corpses on the corpse pillars seemed to have come back to life, madly searching for any new movements. There was even a giant arm covered in rotting flesh that emerged from one of the corpse pillars. The arm grabbed at the void of space. The void of space shattered. Gu Qingshan's group remained silent as they silently watched this. The king couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat off his forehead. He only wanted to demonstrate, but the situation was even more terrifying than he expected. Do you see that? Do not release any power, otherwise you'll be torn apart right away. What about talking? Talking won't affect anything, but I suggest using telepathy. Everyone nodded in unison. The power of that arm was too terrifying. Even looking at it made them feel like they couldn't resist it. All right, be careful. Let's go, Gu Qingshan said. He lightly leapt onto the stone slab. Everyone stepped forward and steadied themselves. It was now that the king noticed something. The people who explored the ruin with him were all wearing armor. That's right, to explore such a dangerous ruin, of course they would need armor. But what's going on with these armors? The king's gaze passed through everyone and couldn't help but stare blankly. He knew better than Zhang Yongho and Yi Fei Li how powerful these armors were. These people weren't particularly strong, but their unique abilities were all very powerful, and their equipment was excellent. That's really good. Zhang Yongho noticed his gaze and asked in surprise, "What are you looking at? Is there a problem?" He was wearing a full suit of black armor, occasionally fading into the void of space, looking extremely mysterious. After a long silence, the king stammered, "About that. Speaking of which, I only have a single question. Although I'm the king, but I also have more ideals. You know, being the king is a tough job. I don't really want to do it." Zhang Yongho was a bit confused and couldn't help but ask, "What exactly are you trying to say? Are you still recruiting?" The king asked. Chapter 1081. Are you still accepting people? The king asked. From their previous conversation, he could tell that these people were extremely wealthy. The only unexpected thing was that he didn't expect them to be this wealthy. The king cautiously glanced at Gu Qingshan and Lola. The armors these two were wearing were beyond the value of money. Even if he sold the entire Calming Soul country, he still wouldn't be able to afford them. Furthermore, the little girl was this man's servant. He had heard the little girl call the man master before. Even if words couldn't be trusted, their relationship could still be verified through their actions and expressions. The little girl was constantly paying attention to the man. As long as he said anything, the little girl would seriously consider it. As long as he gave an order, the little girl would accept it without hesitation. When he smiled, she would be happy. When he frowned, she would be nervous. Without a doubt, this was a master and servant pair. The king was a bit jealous. Indeed, Calming Soul Country was a paradise for demis. Every demi could directly awaken a divine skill and were naturally powerful. But compared to this kind of servant, a divine skill doesn't seem like much at all. Just like how I had countless divine skills, but they still stabbed me with a scepter and almost took my life. Right, that scepter was also a priceless treasure. After everything is over, these people would definitely have a way to leave Calming Soul Country. With that in mind, the king's mind completely changed. Calming Soul Country is already under the control of monsters. What's the point of staying here? Might as well follow them to the 900 million world layers. It would be best if I could join them. The king felt his vision clearing up. That was why he asked the question above. Gu Qingshan smiled and replied, "We are accepting people, but according to the rules of our Blade Edge pledge, there's a 3-month probation period before accepting people." Probation period? Is it to test loyalty? The king asked. That's not true. Our organization consists of experts from all fields. There's no such thing as a single person's loyalty, Gu Qingshan replied. Hearing that, the king felt much better. Gu Qingshan continued. The probation period is to allow prospective members to display their value and determine what kind of treatment they will receive after they officially join the organization. Treatment, the king repeated. Yes, treatment. Gu Qingshan nodded affirmatively. Then, how do I become a reserve member? The king asked. As long as you get the agreement of 3 members, you can be considered a reserve member, Gu Qingshan said. The king thought for a moment, then said decisively, All right, I will now officially apply to become a reserve member. I hope you will agree. After all, my combat power is very strong. I can be a good support for this team. Gu Qing-shan agreed. That's true. We need someone who can stand to the front. What do you think? Yifei Li and Zhang Yongho looked at each other. Gu Qing-shan was indeed capable. She actually made up a rule of probation period on the spot, and she didn't even blink when she said it. In fact, when this guy said, an expert who can truly stand at the front, they already understood. TSK. It seemed that there was finally someone who could fight at the forefront of this exploration of the ruins. Also, outside Calming Soul Country, the Soul Shrieker should have already arrived. The two of them nodded without hesitation. No problem. Gu Qing-shan patted the king's shoulder and said, very well, from now on, you will become a reserve member of the Blade Edge Pledge. You will have 3 months to prove your worth, and your worth will directly determine your treatment. The king looked at Gu Qing-shan, glanced at the invisible wind around his body, then at Lola. He couldn't help but point at Lola and asked, about that. I want to ask, at what level do I have to reach to obtain a servant? Just like you, Gu Qing-shan shook her head. That's not something you should know. You're only a reserve member. You can ask later. The king was surprised. I thought she would give me a few conditions to make me work harder, but this is what she said. Right, it's not like she's begging me to join. The king hurriedly said, my apologies. I was being presumptuous. Gu Qing-shan nodded and said nothing else. That was the end of the topic. In the darkness, the stone slab continued to float forward, slowly approaching the corpse pillar. The first corpse pillar was getting closer. The king once again closed his eyes and fell into thought. Let me think. Some secrets seem to be unsealed in my mind. He lowered his head and stopped for a while. Only when the stone slab was about to float past the first corpse pillar did he show an expression of realization. I understand. These are the mythical creatures created by the gods using the abyss. They're all sealed inside the corpse pillars. I need a bit of time to chant a prayer to awaken them. The king raised the golden ring in his hand and chanted. The god of life has granted you unique forms. The power of the abyss has granted you weapons. You have waited for this moment. This is the beginning of your awakening. The golden ring suddenly lit up. The king was overjoyed and continued to chant. At the same time, Gu Qing-shan abruptly covered his eyes. He suddenly felt a sharp pain in his eyes. Lola immediately noticed something was wrong, grabbed his hand, and asked worriedly, Gu Qing-shan, what's wrong? It's nothing. One of my techniques is just a bit unstable. Gu Qing-shan smiled and replied. He fell into thought. Why will my eyes suddenly hurt at this time? Could it be some sort of reminder? But this is a world technique that I created, not a living being. Why would it remind me? That's not right. There's indeed a will within this technique. The remnant will of a parallel world. Because I helped it win against chaos, it was able to join my iris technique. What is it trying to tell me? Gu Qing-shan undid the black cloth in front of his eyes and opened his eyes. There was only darkness in front of him. He still couldn't see anything. Wait a minute. A scene slowly manifested in front of Gu Qing-shan's eyes. Countless corpses gathered to form giant pillars that stood in the boundless darkness. The forest of corpse pillars. It was still the same place. The same scene. This forest of corpses was almost exactly the same as the real world that his inner sight sensed, but there were also some differences. Gu Qing-shan observed the forest of corpse pillars with both eyes, constantly comparing it to the real world that his inner sight sensed. This place was still the same, but there were some slight differences. Some of the corpses on the pillars were arranged differently, and in the forest of corpses that he could see, he didn't see them, nor did he see the stone slab. As far as the eye could see, it was dead silent. How strange. Why did I see another forest of corpse pillars? While Gu Qing-shan was confused, he suddenly heard a faint rustling sound. It was as if something was crawling on the ground in a tiny, moving pattern. Gu Qing-shan looked up, only to see a gray maw in the darkness above the forest of corpses. This was an unimaginably large maw, so large that when it opened, it could almost swallow the entire forest of corpses. The maw suddenly sucked in the countless corpse pillars below. The corpse pillars split into two, revealing the various giant monsters that were slumbering within. The maw slowly opened. Thousands of long tongues flew out, quickly coiling around the slumbering monsters. The tongues completely enveloped the monsters, turning them into a ball of flesh that madly wriggled. Screams of pain resounded from inside the ball of flesh. A few moments later, the tongues all spread out. All the monsters were devoured. Not a single drop of HP was left. The long tongues quickly retracted. The maw also disappeared. The world returned to darkness. Complete darkness. Gu Qingshan knew that he had lost his sight again. But when exactly did that happen? He tied the black cloth in front of his eyes and continued to think. What does that have to do with my current situation? Could it be that I saw the future? In other words, I'm the same as the Earth Creator and have awakened the ability to see the future? While Gu Qingshan was carefully thinking, the king's voice resounded in his ears. The king's prayer seemed to be about to end. His voice abruptly became louder. Divine power and abyssal power, heed the God of life's command. Awaken from your eternal slumber and serve me. The golden ring's light pierced through the darkness, illuminating the entire forest of corpse pillars as if it was daytime. Rumble, 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 dash one after another, the giant corpse pillars split open from the middle, revealing the scene inside. Empty. Every single corpse pillar was empty. The so-called mythical creatures left behind by the god of life didn't seem to exist. Empty. No. The king shouted in confusion. That can't be right. They were clearly slumbering here. How could they not be? But the others didn't care about what he said. They all looked up at the same time, towards the darkness above the forest of corpses. Although they couldn't see anything, they could hear a series of rustling noises coming from the darkness, as if something was about to come. The king was a bit surprised, then joyfully declared, "Ah, perhaps it's been too long. They've already awoken." He raised his head and looked up, waiting expectantly. Gu Qingshan's expression changed. So what I saw just now was the world's past. The terrifying creature that ate all the mythical creatures with its mouth alone. It's about to descend. Gu Qingshan couldn't help but shout, "Lola, shelter of infinite worlds." Lola opened her flower umbrella without hesitation. Chapter 1082. As soon as Lola opened her flower umbrella, Gu Qingshan, Boss, Zhang Yongho, and Yi Feili all grabbed the umbrella's handle in unison. The five of them disappeared at the same time. The king opened his arms wide, shouting at the gray maw, "Come, serve me." Before he could finish, he was hit by something. He also disappeared. A second later, dozens of long tongues turned into blurred images as they descended from above. Boom! The hovering stone slab gave off a mass of light to protect itself. But the light couldn't stop the long tongues and was quickly destroyed. The entire stone slab also broke apart, falling into the endless darkness below. The darkness was boundless and heavy. As the sound of the stone slab breaking slowly faded away, it swallowed everything else. Silence. Other than the corpse pillars that were still wide open, there was nothing else around. The corpses all had their heads lowered, motionless. They weren't screaming like before at all. Swish, swish, swish. The sound of something crawling could be heard. One tongue, two tongues, countless tongues descended from above, spreading out like tentacles, searching for the source of the power from before. Thousands of tongues licked at every corpse pillar, not leaving a single inch untouched. After searching for the corpse pillar, the long tongue spread out in the dark void like a tentacle, trying to touch something. But nothing. After a long while, the thousands of tongues finally retracted back into the gray maw. The sound of swish, swish, swish came again. The maw returned to the darkness, slowly going away together with the sound. The forest of corpse pillars returned to silence. Time passed. On the cliff leading to the forest of corpse pillars, a few figures suddenly appeared. The king swayed and fell to the ground. His face looked pale and twisted. Large beads of sweat hung from his forehead and slid down his cheeks. Zhang Yongho asked, "Why do you look so pale?" The king spoke in despair. It's over, it's all over. The only chance to enter this place has been wasted. I don't think so. This is just the beginning. Lola couldn't help but say. The king replied, You don't know, but that stone slab is the only beacon in this place. Without it, we wouldn't know where to go. We can go back and discuss what we should do, Euphale said. Turn around and take a look, the king said. Everyone turned around to look at where they came from. The secret passage had disappeared, and there was only empty darkness left in his line of sight. The cliff they were on was suspended in midair. There was nothing in front of them, behind them, left and right, so there was no secret passage. We can't go back? Gu Qingshan asked. The king sighed. Yes, once you enter, you only have one chance, and there's no turning back. Only by reaching the deepest part of the ruins can you teleport back. Everyone was silent. They couldn't go back. He had lost his way again. What should I do now? Gu Qingshan stood at the edge of the cliff, feeling the frigid wind in the void. She suddenly asked, What do you think about that monster just now? It was extremely powerful, even stronger than the monsters in the strife zones, Zhang Yongho commented. Lola replied, This monster isn't recorded in the 900 million world layers bestiary, so I'm guessing that it doesn't belong to the scope of our knowledge. That's true, boss followed up. I've never seen such a thing before either. It's not a monster from the 900 million world layers or the abyss, nor does it belong to the inner plane or the space-time mystery nest. It's most likely a monster from the faraway space vortex, because the divinities didn't manage to clear that place. Everyone turned to look at him. Gu Qingshan continued, I heard that for the sake of a place like Calming Soul Country, the divinities fought against various monsters within the space vortex and cleared out a large part of it. That's right. The divinities also set up many concealment and protective measures within this space vortex. This was the reason why the 900 million world layers was able to survive for the last 100 million years, boss added. He walked to the edge of the cliff and looked at the void of darkness in front of them together with Gu Qingshan. This place is actually a dead abyss, he said. What's a dead abyss? After the destruction of the inner plane, the divinities created various shelters within the space vortex, such as Calming Soul Country. After that, the divinities fought against the monsters within the space vortex and gradually suffered irrecoverable wounds. The divinities discovered the eternal property of the abyss and wanted to use the power of the abyss to make themselves eternal. The 7 divinities worked together to separate a few places from the eternal abyss, allowing the divinities to study the power of the abyss. After countless years, the divinities still died in the end, unable to protect this place. And since this place wasn't part of the abyss naturally wouldn't protect it. So the monsters from the faraway space vortex gradually found their way here and took over this place. Everyone's hearts were shaken as they listened, as if they were listening to an epic story from countless years ago. Boss's tone became heavier. This place is far more dangerous than you can imagine. With just a few of us, we might not be able to make it to the end. Euphale looked outside the cliff and said, But we have no way out. That's right, we've already reached this place. There's no way to return to Calming Soul Country, Zhang Yongho replied. Wait a minute. Let me take a look, Lola said. She searched through her backpack and finally took out a compass. Lola looked at the needle and direction on the compass and sighed. If that's the case, then we've reached an incredibly faraway place. No warp technique would be able to send us back through such a distance, Gu Qingshan said. Then let's go to the end of this ruin. There should be a way for the god of life to leave this place. The king waved his hand dismissively. Do you still not understand? The stone tablet that could indicate our direction has already been destroyed. We can't find the way forward. The way forward. Gu Qingshan pondered, then patted Zhang Yongho's shoulder. It's up to you. Zhang Yongho drew a card and lightly tossed it forward. The card fell to the ground and turned into a deep black hole. Meow. The soft meow of a cat resounded. The black cat leapt out and landed on Zhang Yongho's shoulder. Little sweetie, what do you want to eat today? Gu Qingshan rubbed her hands together and smiled flatteringly. The black cat licked her paw and said, Meow, 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 meow. It said it's hungry. Anything is fine, but it has to be delicious, Zhang Yongho translated. Gu Qingshan thought for a bit, then asked everyone, Are you hungry? It's almost time for lunch. Yi Fei replied. Boss raised his hand. Since we're talking about food, I want to eat that egg fried rice from last time. I want noodles, Lola said. I'll have a steak and a bottle of liquor, Jang Young-ho said. Gu Qin-shan looked at the king. The king took a step back, looked at this group of people in disbelief, then at the terrifying pillars of corpses in the void of space. Although the corpses were motionless, if you looked at them for a while, you'd notice the eerie smiles on their faces. And in the darkness above the pillars of corpses, there was an incredibly powerful and terrifying monster. And you still want to eat in this situation? The king couldn't help but point at the numerous corpses and said, And now you're planning to cook? Don't you want to take a look at the situation over there? Gu Qin-shan glanced at it and said without a care, Don't be afraid. If these corpses can still move, that's fine. They're all under my control. I don't have the appetite to eat. The king could only say that. Gu Qin-shan then ignored him. Gu Qin-shan turned around and told the others, Steak is fine. Egg fried rice is fine as well. Lola, noodles are no good. Order something else. And Yi Fei, what do you want to eat? Noodles are no good? Then I want to eat the cake you bake. I want ramen. Wait a minute. Why aren't you making noodles anymore? Fine. I'll have a small mushroom and minced meat rice. Then an ice cream and a cup of pear sugar tea. Yi Fei is so sly. I also want ice cream, Lola said. Ice cream? That's good stuff. I want it too, Boss joined in. Gu Qin-shan took out an apron and nodded. All right, I'll make it now in this land of death abyss far away from the 900 million world layers, inside the god of life's ruin, in front of countless pillars of corpses. Everyone enjoyed a warm meal. Gu Qin-shan made an extra portion of each type of food for Black Cat to eat. After the meal, everyone was very satisfied. Black Cat was also very satisfied. Meow, 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 meow. It said it's delicious. Tell me if you need anything, Jang Young-ho translated as he held a glass of liquor in his hand. We're lost here. Please lead us to the deepest part of this place, Gu Qin-shan said. Meow, meow. It said it's fine. That's good. Lola, open the umbrella. Inghao have Black Cat sit on it. Fei, pay attention to our surroundings. We'll move forward like this. Got it. Everyone replied. Gu Qin-shan clapped her hands and spoke to the void of space. You stand guard at the front. Contact me immediately if anything happens. Shioba reply came from the void of space, startling the king. He didn't have time to think about what it was, because everyone was about to move. Everyone stood around Lola. Gu Qin-shan looked around and declared, Let's go. Chapter 1083. Silence. The Black Cat was lying on top of the flower umbrella, looking around with a serious expression. Its ears occasionally twitched. Its eyes seemed to be able to see through the void of space, able to see many things that others couldn't. Gu Qin-shan's group followed the direction it was pointing and slowly flew forward. Finally, all the corpse pillars had been left behind by them. There was only empty darkness in front of them. The howling of the wind in the darkness sounded like the endless wailing of billions of souls. Meow, the Black Cat hurriedly called out. Everyone immediately stopped and hurriedly retreated some distance. This wind seems a bit too strong, Lola commented. She casually threw a metal shield towards the direction of the wind. Ho! In a split second, the shield was reduced to dust. Very quickly, the dust also disappeared without a trace. Lola opened her mouth wide in shock and couldn't help but exclaim, Could it be the winds of chaotic tribulation? Indeed, it is the winds of chaotic tribulation. Don't get too close, otherwise no one will be able to save you, Boss reminded her. Is there no other path ahead? Gu Qin-shan asked. Everyone turned to the Black Cat. The Black Cat scoffed at them and pointed its paw at the void of space on their left. The void of space? Everyone was confused. Gu Qin-shan casually threw a sword phantom. The lightning sword phantom quickly flew through the void of space and quickly went away. There was nothing. Shanu spoke up. Gongzi, I seem to have sensed something. What did you sense? I can sense that there's a hidden technique in the void of space, but I can't touch it. Can you cut it open? I can, but it will completely destroy that technique. Then forget it. Seems like we're on the right path, Gu Qin-shan muses. But just knowing the path isn't enough. We'll need to find the corresponding unique method to head deeper into the ruin at this point. The king spoke up. Wait a moment. The information sealed in my mind is slowly appearing, saying so. The king closed his eyes. Everyone had no choice but to wait. A few moments later, the king opened his eyes and took out a scepter about the length of an arm. The king sighed. This is the scepter of the king that has been passed down from generation to generation. Every king was never allowed to take it away from them. I had always thought that it was an etiquette and rules set by my ancestors. I didn't expect it to be used here. He gripped the scepter tightly and struck the void of space. Dong! A muffled sound came from a void. The scepter bounced back. Everyone's eyes lit up. There's hope. It's too loud. Hurry up. Jang Young-ho reminded. I know, the king said. He gripped the scepter tightly and smashed it into the void of space. Dong! 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 The knocking sound pierced through the silence and resounded in all directions in the darkness. Yifei Li's expression suddenly changed. I heard the monster's voice. It's coming from above, he said. Everyone was shocked. He didn't expect the monster to still be here. Could it be that it didn't notice them earlier, so it had been waiting for its prey above the forest of corpse pillars? Hurry up. Gu Qingshan couldn't help but urge him. I know. I'm doing my best, the king replied. He angrily shouted, wielding the scepter, and struck the void of space in a frenzy. At this point, everyone heard the same sound again. Above the darkness of space, the same rustling sound could be heard again. A giant gray maw large enough to fill their vision once again appeared from the darkness. Although Shelter of Infinite Worlds was able to block all detection, the king's striking allowed the gray maw to confirm its direction. Around Gu Qingshan's group, faint runes manifested to completely seal off this area. Sealing off this area first? How smart! Jang Young-ho looked at the runes around them and muttered. At this point, the gray maw slowly opened towards Gu Qingshan's group. Millions of long tongues wriggled and shot out at once. We won't be able to win. Even if we attack together, we'll still die. Quickly think of something, boss quickly said. Let me. Jang Young-ho turned his hand to take out the large cannon barrel and propped it on his shoulder. The cannon barrel was aimed at the maw. Don't. Cannon bro is our trump card. Keep it for now. Gu Qingshan stopped him. Gu Qingshan drew a card from the void of space. The card trembled in the wind and turned into a crimson spear. Streaks of sharp red light drifted around the body of the spear. True Crimson Demon Spear. Ah! Gu Qingshan shouted and performed a set of spear techniques. Swift attack, shower. This wasn't a particularly powerful skill, but it was the fastest spear technique that Gu Qingshan could find. It didn't require a particularly powerful technique. At this point, Gu Qingshan only wanted speed, because the true Crimson Demon Spear was unstoppable. He brandished his spear and created layers upon layers of illusions. Like a wave of red shadows, he rushed straight up towards the long tongue that was surging down from the sky. Red light against tongues. Sha 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 sha. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The unstoppable demon spear completely cut the tongues to pieces. Pieces of flesh and blood rained down from the sky. Boss shouted, "This thing is highly poisonous. Quickly blow it away." Lola took out a fan from her satchel and fanned it with all her might. The wind was blown backwards. All the pieces of flesh and blood were blown upwards and stuck to the gray maw. The gray maw froze. Boss said, "Gu Qingshan, be careful. We were only relying on the sharpness of our weapons just now. It's probably going to be angry now." Gu Qingshan put the demon spear away and asked behind him, "It's not done yet?" The king loudly replied, "Soon." He raised his scepter and smashed it down towards the void of space. Bam! Zigzagging cracks suddenly appeared in the void, spreading in all directions. At the same time, the hissing sound behind the gray maw was becoming louder and more hurried. The gray maw slowly peeked out from the darkness. "My God, what exactly is that?" Jang Young-ho muttered in a low voice. "I don't know. I've never seen such a thing before," Lola muttered blankly. Everyone was speechless for a while. Half of the monster's body was revealed in the darkness. It had a gray maw with a pair of long whiskers on both sides. At the end of each whisker was a human face. The monster's body was made from countless corpses, slithering forward like a snake. But unlike a snake, both sides of its body were filled with human hands. These hands were roughly counted to be in the thousands, constantly moving backwards in the darkness like 100 legs moving forward. As Gu Qing-shan saw this, she also couldn't understand what kind of entity this was. She turned to Boss. Boss showed a rare expression of nervousness and told everyone, "Damn it, this is a void divinity. We can't deal with it." Yi Fei Li was surprised. "It's clearly a monster. Why is it called a divinity?" Boss replied, "Its strength is at the level of a void divinity. As long as it's a bit serious, it can easily crush us." Lola was unconvinced. Then just now, Gu Qing-shan only interrupted its feeding. "But now we're all going to die here," Boss replied. Zhang Young-ho pulled out the cannon again and propped it on his shoulder. This time, no one tried to stop him. Sensing the indescribably eerie presence coming from the monster, Gu Qing-shan clenched her swords tightly and spoke behind her. "Your Majesty, please hurry. Otherwise everyone will be finished." The king also knew that this was a moment of life and death, so he mustered all his strength and attacked again. Open for me." Boom! The crack in the void of space completely collapsed, forming a large hole. Through the hole, one could clearly see what was on the other side. It was a ruined building that looked like a garden. At the center of the ruins stood a beautiful fountain. "Attention! This hole will only last for 3 breaths worth of time. We need to quickly enter," the king loudly shouted. As soon as he said so, he was caught by Gu Qing-shan. Gu Qing-shan was holding the king. Lola was sitting on her shoulder. Lola was holding the flower umbrella, while Zhang Young-ho, Yi Fei Li, and Boss were each holding the flower umbrella. Divine skill, shadow shift. A large gray tree suddenly appeared where Gu Qing-shan was. This was a tree in the garden. At the same time, the void divinity seemed to have reacted and quickly bit down. From a few thousand meters away, the tree suddenly uttered a short scream. As it tried to struggle, it disappeared from the void of space. Above its head, the gray mouth was slowly chewing on something. But very quickly, as if noticing something amiss, the void divinity roared in fury. At this point, Gu Qing-shan's group had arrived at the ruined garden. While it took a long time to describe, all of this happened in the blink of an eye. If Gu Qing-shan had been even half a second slower, everyone here would have been swallowed whole by the monster. The hole in the void of space slowly closed. One final breath. The void divinity rushed forward as fast as lightning. It reached out with its 2 tentacles, using the human faces on them to bite the 2 ends of the hole and try to pull it apart. Don't think about escaping. The monster used telepathy to let everyone hear its declaration. A miracle had occurred. As its 2 tentacles continued to pull, the hole in the void of space began to open up again. In the garden, everyone naturally saw this scene. This void divinity monster was able to open up the void of space, so it seems to be trying to follow them. Once it comes, who will be able to stop it? Gu Qing-shan's inner sight quickly scanned the area. This was a completely sealed garden. The darkness around them seemed to be some sort of seal. This was a closed environment. Gu Qing-shan has no other thoughts, she shouted. "Zhang Young-ho." "Got it." Zhang Young-ho carried Cannon Brother, aimed at the hole in the void, and pressed the fire button. A deep voice came from the long barrel of the cannon. "This is the time to face a new challenge." Boom! A beam of blazing light shot out from the cannon barrel and smashed into the hole in the void, blasting the monster's head. The monster let out an angry roar. Judging from the sound, it did not seem to feel any pain, but the world-destroying power was too strong. The huge impact made it impossible for it to stay where it was. The next second, the beam of light wrapped around the monster and disappeared from the hole in the void. The hole gradually closed up. This time it was really closed. Chapter 1084. The void deity was sent flying by Cannon Brothers' blinding pillar of light. The hole created by the king's scepter finally closed up. Everyone waited for a few moments. But nothing happened. Obviously, the void deity wasn't able to break through the barrier by himself. Everyone sighed in relief at the same time. Finally escaped with our lives, Boss calmly said. Lola patted her chest. If it had come here just now, we would have all died, wouldn't we? Of course, Boss calmly replied. We were all very nervous, but why do you still look so calm? Do you have some sort of backup plan? Lola asked. There's no such thing as a backup plan. I'm just used to seeing big scenes, so I won't be easily affected by something like this, Boss calmly replied. Saying so, he took the lead and walked toward the fountain, because the cat was pointing at the beautiful fountain at the center of the garden. What a powerful person. Lola looked at his back and muttered in admiration. Jang Young-ho suddenly pointed at Boss's back, only to see that Boss's clothes were completely soaked in cold sweat, sticking to his body and showing off the muscles on his back. He was clearly still shaken. Everyone, Gu Qing-shan said, All right, let's go take a look as well. Thus, everyone stepped forward and carefully examined the fountain. The water was flowing slowly. The spring water was clear. The entire fountain was so big that 30 people could wrap their arms around it. In the middle of it stood a vivid and lifelike mermaid sculpture. The mermaid smiled, holding a trident in her hand. Water flowed out from the tip of the trident. As the king walked here, he slowly closed his eyes and muttered, Ah, I know this place in my mind. This place was left behind by the god of life. His voice gradually became softer, and it was clear that he was unlocking the seal on his memory. Gu Qing-shan looked at him, then at Boss. Did you find anything? Boss looked at the mermaid statue and shook his head. Too much time has passed. It is impossible to determine the situation here. We will have to wait until his memory is unsealed. Gu Qing-shan sighed emotionally. That's right. The place we just came from has already become the lair of the void deities. Who knows what it's like here? Everyone could only wait in silence. At this moment, a deep voice came from Jang Young-ho's shoulder. Put me on the ground. Yes, Brother Cannon. Jang Young-ho carefully placed the shoulder-mounted cannon on the ground. Pow Bro said, You're a good kid, and you do things in the style of an assassin. That's why I'm helping you. It's not a disgrace to my reputation. Yes. Jang Young-ho nodded. Cannon Bro continued. According to the rules I've set, I can only help you once, then I'll be leaving. Now, call out your pistol. I need to tell it something. Jang Young-ho took out his assault pistol. Nice to meet you, Brother Cannon. Assault pistol respectfully greeted him. Pow Bro's deep voice came again. I've heard of you. You used to be an assault rifle. Your talents far surpassed many weapons. You had a bright future ahead of you, but you didn't know how to cherish it. Every day, you only knew how to spend your time with women, eating, drinking, and having fun. Finally, you ran into a tough opponent and lost so badly that you couldn't even protect your own body. You're right, Pow Bro. I've been feeling ashamed. I've been observing you recently. You've been constantly training your abilities. You've truly turned over a new leaf. So before I return, I've decided to help you out a bit. Crack. With a loud crack, the entire shoulder-mounted cannon broke apart. Its parts scattered all over the ground. Pow Bro's voice came again. I'll leave these parts for you. Think about your path carefully and find a new one. Assault pistol choked up. Thank you, Pow Bro, for giving me this chance. I'll definitely do my best. Little assault pistol. Don't shout so loudly when you attack from now on. Don't you know it's embarrassing? Ah, yes, Pow Bro. Very well. I'm going to return to Grandpa Bullet's place. Recently, a few youngsters who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth dare to steal my place. I need to go back and help them out. Pow Bro, I want to follow you for now on, Pow Bro chuckled, then went silent. It's gone. Jang Young-ho reminded him. That's true. The assault pistol jumped down from Jang Young-ho's hand, landing among the parts on the ground. Back in the day, I was also a weapon that defeated all the technological newbies of the younger generation. But now I've ended up like this. I'm going to kill that bastard. I'm going to use its blood to wash away my reputation. The assault pistol screeched as it broke apart into countless parts and scattered. Then a strange scene occurred. The parts that belonged to the assault pistol and Pow Bro's parts mixed together, giving off a series of ding-ding-ding-ding noises. The parts seemed to have a life of their own as they tried to reassemble themselves. But as soon as they succeeded, they would scatter again as if they couldn't make up their minds. Jang Young-ho silently watched this, then suddenly spoke up. If you want to kill someone for revenge, you need to have unstoppable strength. All the parts stopped. Ka, ka. More and more sounds of the parts colliding resounded. They seemed to have found a direction and quickly reassembled themselves in a dazzling manner, appearing resolute and decisive. No more parts scattered after they reassembled. In just a few breaths' worth of time, all the parts disappeared from the ground. What replaced them was a rifle. It was a shiny jet-black light sniper rifle. Although it looked simple and light, its entire body exuded a cold and austere aura. The light sniper rifle flew back into Jang Young-ho's hand as he spoke in a low voice. I've just finished reconstructing it, so I need to rest for a bit. After that, there was no more sound. Jang Young-ho put the sniper rifle away with a joyful expression on his face. Congratulations, this rifle will only get stronger, Lola praised. Gu Qingshan and Boss also smiled and nodded. At this point, the king abruptly opened his eyes. I know now. This is the causality life form that the god of life prepared for her holy kingdom. She shall help me defeat all my enemies. The king excitedly declared. He began to walk around the fountain, chanting an incantation as he walked. The king walked around the fountain again and again. Time slowly passed. After the king had walked around the fountain 10 times, he returned in front of everyone and loudly spoke to the mermaid in the fountain. Awaken, servant of the god of life. Lady Tidecaller, I need you to help me defeat the enemies of the deity. Saying so, the king cut open his finger and dripped his blood into the fountain. I'm the continuation of the god of life, the descendant of the deity. You must come and meet me, the king chanted in a low voice. Hearing that, everyone couldn't help but exchange glances. So the royal family of Calming Soul Country were the descendants of the god of life. If that's the case, at the time of the Inner Plane's destruction, the god of life didn't flee by herself, but instead took the entire holy kingdom with her. The 7 deities were probably the same. To help their descendants establish a safe haven, they had no choice but to fight against the monsters of the space vortex. While everyone was thinking that, the mermaid statue in the fountain began to give off a faint holy glow. The white stone color quickly faded from the statue. The statue slowly began to move. Gu Qingshan sensed it and released her inner sight to scan the mermaid's eyes. The mermaid's eyes were staring straight at everyone. Chapter 1085. The mermaid looked at the king and spoke. Descendant of the god of life, I am a servant of the god. My name is the Tidecaller if you want me to serve you. You will need to show me your proof. The king raised his hand. The ring of Demi is on my hand. You should be able to see it clearly. He showed the golden ring to the other party. The mermaid's gaze focused on the ring and nodded. Sure enough, it is the ring of the god of life. There is no mistake about it. Please present it to me. As soon as the king took the ring off, he seemed to have recalled something and shook his head. In my sealed memories, this step doesn't seem to be required, he said. Then, please take us with you, a black flash. The trident pierced through the king's body and pinned him to the ground. The king spat out some blood and shouted in despair. And no, his soul had been taken away by Yi Fei Li's hook, leaving him with only one life left. The mermaid's expression turned cold and declared, Hand over the ring. Exchange it for your life. As soon as she said so, a light breeze blew past. Her head had been severed by a sword at some point and was blown away by the wind. A look of surprise appeared on the mermaid's face, but she was chopped into pieces by another long sword that was waiting in the distance. How are you? Gu Qingshan walked in front of the king and asked. The black trident seemed to contain some sort of magical power as it stabbed the king's body. In just a few breaths' worth of time, the king's face had sunk so deeply that it resembled a skull. At this point, the king seemed to have realized something. He put the golden ring in front of Gu Qingshan and said, Help me pass it to clang clang. The golden ring fell to the ground. Before he could finish his sentence, the king had died. Without anyone being able to react in time, The king of Calming Soul Country had died a worthless death. Gu Qingshan waved her hand to put the golden ring away, then told everyone, "Prepare for battle." Didn't you kill that mermaid? Zhang Yongho asked in confusion. No, he's not dead, Yi Fei Li said. Tilting her head to listen, she said, I don't hear any soul movements. Everyone turned to look at the fountain. The headless corpse made a grabbing motion in the air and took out a small dark red shield. A vertical pupil was carved on the shield, and it was looking at everyone. A flesh-colored armor with vertical pupils gradually appeared on the body of the headless corpse. Fresh food. You've disturbed my sleep. A cold voice came from the headless corpse. Lola hid behind Gu Qingshan and nervously said, Gu Qingshan, this thing is giving me goosebumps. Gu Qingshan asked, Boss, do you know what's going on? This is a type of spirit from the space vortex, a type of occultism that can't be defended against. It can reside inside the body of any entity, devouring their soul and flesh to turn their body into weapons and armor. Boss replied, Why didn't you say so earlier? Zhang Yongho shouted. It can't be defended against, can reside inside the body of any entity, devouring their soul and flesh. There's no way to fight against it. As its enemy, the only thing they could do was wait for death. I've only heard of it before. This is the first time I've seen it. Boss replied. Gu Qingshan quickly asked, Does its ability have a set of rules? Or is it able to reside inside someone else's body as long as it wants to? Boss replied, I don't know either. Everyone's hearts sank. Gu Qingshan abruptly grabbed the earth sword from the void of space and swung it at the black trident. The earth sword's ability, Sanctuary, was instantly activated, followed by Gu Qingshan's full-powered strike. Key! An intense sound of impact resounded all around. The black trident turned into a streak of lightning, pierced through the void of space, and disappeared without a trace. Damn it! My divine armament! A cold and venomous voice cursed from inside the headless mermaid's corpse. Originally, after absorbing the king's soul and power, the black trident would have become incredibly powerful. But now, the weapon was sent flying without a trace. Gu Qingshan shrugged. I'm sorry, but I feel like if we want to make any sort of agreement with you, we need to make sure that you can't instantly kill us. Agreement? The gloomy voice paused for a moment, then suddenly laughed. Yuri mistaken. There will be no agreement, and I don't want to have any unnecessary words with Yuri. Nothing but my food. Gu Qingshan was a bit surprised. It's very rare to see an opponent that doesn't even want to talk. The headless mermaid raised the vertical pupil shield up high, angrily shouting, Even without the trident, I can still take your lives. Countless black shadows suddenly shot out of the vertical pupil and rushed into everyone's body at lightning speed. Zhang Yongho, Yi Fei Li, Lola, Boss, and even Black Cat all froze. They quickly lost all signs of life and fell to the ground. Only Gu Qingshan was still standing there. The cold voice came again. You sent my weapon flying. That was a divine armament that I spent countless years nurturing, but you killed my companions. Saying so, Gu Qingshan's expression didn't change at all. He held the earth sword in his hand, calmed his breathing, and carefully recalled the strike he used to block the divine retribution. Everyone was dead. Only he was left. He could feel death approaching. In his long years of fighting, this was the most dangerous moment. The monster spoke with a mocking tone, slowly speaking. The fact that you were able to form a group to come here means that your strength is about the same in order to make you suffer the greatest pain and torture before your death. I've decided to have your friends work together to kill you. Black threads appeared from the vertical pupil shield, connecting to the corpses of Zhang Yongho's group. Zhang Yongho, Yi Fei Li, Lola, and Boss all stood up. They all stared blankly at Gu Qingshan. Die. Gu Qingshan, Zhang Yongho said. We're going to kill you together, Yi Fei Li said. Don't resist. I've always trusted you, Lola said. You won't be able to win against the four of us, Boss said. They all charged towards Gu Qingshan. A sinister laugh came from a shield with a vertical pupil. Come, fight with your companions, die in despair, This is the end I've arranged for you." A second later, Gu Shan let go of the earth sword and grabbed the Chao Yin's sword from the void of space. The sword swung forward. Secret art, life seeker. Secret art, crescent slash. Both secret arts were unleashed at the same time. An arc of sword phantoms flashed and disappeared. His four companions all fell to the ground. Before they could even get close, their limbs had already been cut off by the endless crescent moon white sword phantoms. All of them tumbled to the ground. The vertical pupil shield's voice became frigid. "You killed your own people without hesitation. What a cold heart you have." Gu Shan's expression was still emotionless. He pondered for a few moments, then said, "You still haven't killed me. Seems like you're mistaken about two things." Gu Shan's gaze met the vertical pupil shields and continued. "Firstly, none of my companions are actually that strong. I'm the only one who can fight. Secondly, I don't think you're going easy on me just to torture me." While saying so, he raised the golden ring on his finger for the other party to see. The monster spoke. "This is the first time I've ever seen an ant as arrogant as you. I'll let you know that death isn't the end, but the beginning of despair." Gu Shan smiled and softly replied, "You only attacked after the king took off the ring." He paused and stared at the other party. The monster didn't say anything. Gu Shan continued, "It seems when you consumed the Tide Caller's soul, you received a certain degree of resistance and were trapped here by this servant deity's vow." When the monster heard this, it felt as if it had been stabbed. It roared angrily, "I'm going to kill you. Within the endless void, nothing can trap me." Gu Shan put the Chao Yin sword back into the void of space and continued, "Is that so? But as soon as you told the king to take off the ring, you immediately attacked, threatening to use the ring in exchange for his life. The ring is the key to the vow of the god of life, and you seem to have been influenced by this vow." While saying so, Gu Shan remained cautious. But other than controlling his companions to attack him once, the monster hadn't personally attacked him. Gu Shan's heart slowly calmed down. "It seems my judgment wasn't wrong. After consuming the Tide Caller, it somehow took the Tide Caller's place and accepted some sort of vow. Since the ring was on my hand, it couldn't attack me. This time, it was extremely dangerous. Only a hair's breadth away from death." Gu Shan sighed and stared at the shield. "Regarding the ring, your actions were so obvious that I had thought you to be an honest monster. But you've only been full of lies." The vertical pupil on the shield stared at him and suddenly asked, "Why is it that after I killed so many of your companions and controlled them to kill you, you were able to kill them without any hesitation and still remember such an insignificant matter?" "Trivial? What do you mean?" Gu Shan asked. "The ring," the monster replied. It's like this. There's actually no trivial matter in battle," Gu Shan slowly explained. Chapter 1086. The trident that could release water had already been knocked away by Gu Shan, so there was no longer the sound of flowing water from the fountain. Corpses littered the ground. The only unfortunate thing was the king. Before Gu Shan could react, this powerful demi's soul and flesh had already been sucked dry by the black trident, leaving nothing but a thin layer of skin. Everything in the garden fell silent. The headless fishman's corpse stood in the middle of the fountain, raising its shield. The vertical pupil on the shield stared straight at Gu Shan. The vertical pupil noticed that the other party had already taken off the black cloth covering his face, only opening his eyes and staring at him without any expression. "This prey dared to stare at me without any fear. Despicable bastard," the vertical pupil muttered with a hateful tone. Gu Shan didn't seem to hear it at all. "As long as the golden ring is still in my hand, the monster can't hurt me." He didn't look at the monster anymore and casually put the earth sword and Six Paths' great mountain sword into the void of space, letting them disappear. After that, he tapped his inventory bag, took out a cushion, and sat on it. The monster silently observed his every move until Gu Shan formed a hand seal with both hands, closed his eyes, and began to meditate. As time passed, Gu Shan's breathing became even and rhythmic. "This is sleeping?" The vertical pupil on the shield abruptly grew larger, taking up the entire surface of a shield. "Bastard!" the monster angrily roared. The entire garden shook violently under its roar. Some of the more cowardly trees even retreated underground. Gu Qingshan was naturally woken up. He opened his eyes and looked at the monster in confusion. "What are you roaring for?" Gu Qingshan asked. "I'm the one who should be asking that. You dare to sleep in front of me. You're looking down on me." The monster angrily roared. Gu Qingshan asked in confusion. "The current situation is that you can't kill me, and I can't kill you. So what else do you want?" The monster coldly said, "You don't even care about your comrade's corpse, and you don't want to take revenge on me. What a heartless fellow." Gu Qingshan didn't answer. She yawned and muttered, "I've been staying up too much lately. I haven't had any rest. I'll go to bed first." He closed his eyes and prepared to sink into his dreams again. The monster, an indescribable anger accumulated in his heart. The monster couldn't help but yell, "You're not allowed to sleep." Gu Qingshan had to open her eyes again. He said with dissatisfaction, "You can't kill me, so why are you shouting here? Don't you have anything to do every day?" The monster sneered, "When you're trapped here for 10,000 years, you'll know what it means to have nothing to do." Gu Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. It seemed that this monster hadn't been here for long, only about 10,000 years. Unfortunately, he didn't know if there were other monsters in the God of Life's ruins. When he faced the Void Deity earlier, he was able to cut off its tongue with a true Crimson Demon Spear, and Cannon Brother was able to send it flying. But this monster was an occultism entity, capable of devouring souls and flesh to turn into weapons and armor. So he couldn't think of a way to kill it. "If that's the case, we're probably going to be neighbors forever," Gu Qingshan sighed. The monster coldly replied, "An entity that's constantly in the cycle of life and death, like you will one day fall into the law of death. I can't say that we're going to be neighbors forever." Gu Qingshan clapped her hands and smiled. "That's why you should treasure the days you have with me even more. Otherwise, when I die, you'll fall into eternal solitude with no one to talk to." The monster, "What's with this person's words? Is there something wrong with his head? Are you the monster? Or am I the monster?" The monster went silent for a few moments, then spoke with a malicious tone. "Do you understand? I just killed your companions, devoured their flesh and souls in one bite." Gu Qingshan's thoughts turned, but she casually waved her hand. "They're just a bunch of rabble. They have nothing to do with me. Right? Were you fooled just now?" The monster scoffed. "It wasn't even enough to fill the gaps between my teeth. Back when I roamed the space vortex for countless years, I ate whatever I saw. Only then could I be considered full." While saying that, the monster carefully observed Gu Qingshan's expression, only to find that he didn't show any emotions at all. "Seems like these people really aren't my companions. How laughable. I actually ordered them to kill him." While thinking that, Gu Qingshan put her hand into her inventory bag and took out a lot of fresh ingredients. "I'm hungry. I'm going to cook now. Do you want to join me for a meal?" Gu Qingshan asked. The monster froze. What exactly is this person thinking? The monster felt like it had lost all the words it could say. Across from it, Gu Qingshan had already begun cooking. Very quickly, a table full of spirit cooking was ready. These were all top-grade spirit cooking that contained abundant energy of heaven and earth, greatly beneficial to cultivators. Since the monster likes to eat souls and flesh, he probably wouldn't reject this kind of food. While thinking that, Gu Qingshan picked up a pair of chopsticks and began to eat a hot pot. "If you haven't had your fill, come and eat with us," he called out to the monster. Smelling the fragrance, the vertical pupil on the shield slowly turned its gaze towards the table of spirit cooking. "What inferior food," it said sarcastically. Gu Qingshan shook his head. "Eating is a way to kill time. Whether you want to eat or not is your own business. I'm going to eat 3 meals a day anyways." He picked up a piece of meat from the hot pot, dipped in the sauce, put it in his mouth, and began to enjoy it. After finishing the meat, his chopsticks moved on to the plate of fried white fish next to it. After a while, he put his chopsticks down and took a sip from his cup of liquor. Within the refreshing taste, there was also a hint of spiciness. This was top-grade spirit grain liquor. TCH, even a deity wouldn't trade this kind of lifestyle. Gu Qingshan sighed emotionally. He put his cup down and continued to eat. The monster stared at Kieran silently. For over 10,000 years, it had been trapped in this empty garden without a single thing to do. Although it ate a few souls just now, it wasn't enough to fill its stomach. Instead, it made its hunger even harder to get rid of. This insect in front of it might be weak, but it's good at making food to kill time. Killing time. The vertical pupil on the shield slowly moved and stared at a plate of steaming meat. A few moments later, a black shadow flew out from the shield and entered the plate of meat like a bolt of lightning. The entire plate of meat was gone. This process was exactly the same as when it attacked Jang Young-ho's group. The black shadow returned to the shield and carefully sensed the taste just now. Although the power contained in the food was pitifully small and couldn't compare to living flesh and souls, after eating it, it still turned into a bit of power. Although this power was almost undetectable, it was still better than nothing. Something was better than nothing, and the taste was quite good. Killing time. Thinking that, the monster released another black shadow that swept through the dining table. Wherever the black shadow passed, the plates were all wiped clean. Gu Qin complained, "Hey, you're eating too much. Leave some for me." Who would have thought that after hearing his words, the black shadow would actually move even faster? On the dining table, the steamed, fried, boiled spirit stones, even the cold dishes, fruits, spirit liquor, everything was swept clean by the monster. "Pitiful fellow! All your food is mine," the monster mocked. "Absolutely not." Gu Qin shouted and hurriedly tried to grab a bowl of noodles. But while he was fast, the black shadow was even faster. By the time Gu Qin caught the bowl of noodles, the noodles had already been swept clean by the black shadow. There wasn't much left on the dining table. Only a boiling hot pot remained. The black shadow flew back into the vertical pupil. Gu Qin shrugged. "Do you still want to eat good food after treating me like this?" The vertical pupil slowly closed, savoring the food it just ate, and leisurely replied, "You were the one who wanted to treat me just now. Not to mention, I left a dish for you," Gu Qin angrily shouted. "That's the base of the hot pot. You can't eat it." The monster ignored him. Gu Qin couldn't do anything and sighed helplessly. He looked at the void of space. Lines of glowing text appeared on the war god. UI, frowny face at the juncture of life and death. You forcefully activated your I-world. Your I-world has yet to fully awaken. This time's power will soon run out. The world will still exist for the last 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, this parallel dream world will be destroyed. You and your enemy will return to reality. Please make haste. Gu Qin skimmed through everything. 3 minutes. Gu Qin turned to the monster and silently activated, "See you again." "Come, tell me, what exactly are you?" Gu Qin asked. Chapter 1087. Let's rewind time a bit. The mermaid swung her black trident towards the China king and devoured his flesh and soul. Gu Qin took the opportunity to cut off the mermaid's head. He then asked Boss about the monster's origin. Boss explained, "This is a type of spirit from the space vortex, an occultism creature that can't be defended against. It can live inside the body of any entity, then turn their body and soul into weapons and armor by devouring their flesh and soul." Does its ability have a set of rules? Or is it able to live inside someone else's body as long as it wants to? Gu Qin asked. Boss replied, "I don't know either." Everyone's hearts sank. If that's the case, this monster is even more terrifying than the void deity they met in the forest of corpse pillars. At this point, Gu Qin seemed to have noticed something. He took off the black cloth covering his face, opened his eyes, and glanced at the monster. The monster disappeared. At the same time, countless soul points manifested in Gu Qinshan's eyes. From the looks of it, he was activating something. Why did the monster disappear? Yi Fei Li asked in confusion. Lola looked straight into Gu Qinshan's eyes and nervously said, "Gu Qinshan might have done something." Zhang Young-ho controlled his trembling body and tried to regain his calm. Yi Fei Li and Lola didn't have much battle experience. So they weren't like him, who could instinctively sense how dangerous the situation was just now. Jang Young-ho took a deep breath and slowly spoke. That's impossible. That monster gave me a feeling that it was completely unstoppable. Gu Qingshan shouldn't have the strength to fight against it. Lola shook her head. You're wrong. Sometimes fighting has nothing to do with strength. Fighting has nothing to do with strength? Why don't I understand that? Yi Fei Li was even more confused. He had only just entered the 900 million world layers, so there were a lot of things he didn't understand. Boss waved his hand, signaling everyone to stop talking. His expression was extremely heavy, and it revealed a rare, solemn expression. Lola, bring out your strongest sealing treasure and seal this black trident, Boss said. Lola looked at the black trident. After the halberd lost its owner, it let out a faint wail. Okay, Lola said. She took out set after set of sealing treasures and threw them directly at the black trident without thinking too much about what to do. Walla. Soon, all kinds of sealing treasures completely engulfed the black trident. A mountain of treasures. The trident was firmly pressed down and no longer made any sound. Boss heaved a sigh of relief and said, Fei Li, give me a drink. Yi Fei Li handed him a can of soul power drink. Boss drank it all in one gulp. He threw the can away, took out the book of prophesied destinies, and put his other hand on Gu Qingshan's back. What are you doing? Jang Young-ho asked. Boss casually replied, Perhaps your senses are a bit lacking, so you don't know what happened. He exchanged glances with Jang Young-ho, then nodded at the same time. Indeed, the two of them also felt the same thing as Gu Qingshan just now. Boss explained, In that split second just now, death was just a hair's breadth away from fully descending upon us. At the very last moment, Gu Qingshan took off the black cloth in front of his eyes and forcefully activated that technique of his. Everyone turned to Gu Qingshan. He was still standing still, his eyes silently staring at the void of space. An invisible gust of wind drifted around his body. Boss continued, I can sense that Gu Qingshan's technique hasn't been fully perfected yet, so he's still standing here. This has become his greatest weakness. In truth, once this technique is fully perfected, he will disappear together with the monster. In other words, we need to protect him right now. Lola asked. Fortunately, there aren't any other monsters here, so we don't need to protect him this time. While saying so, the book of prophesied destinies in Boss's hand automatically flipped open to display a scene. The figures of Gu Qingshan and the monster appeared on the paper. When everyone was watching, Gu Qingshan had just sent the black trident flying. That can't be right. The black trident is clearly with us. Why did he send it flying? Jang Young-ho couldn't help but ask. Lola glanced at the pile of treasures and confirmed. That black trident is indeed still here. Boss took a deep breath and muttered. Perhaps he used a spell to intercept a point of fate, allowing the monster and his manifested body to travel to some sort of illusory dreamscape similar to a parallel world. That's so creative. Everyone continued to look at the book of prophesied destinies. On the screen, the monster unleashed strands of black fog that killed everyone. No one was able to resist at all. The only person left standing in the garden was Gu Qingshan. At this point, the scene completely disappeared. Lola urged him, Hurry, let us see what's going on. I can't. Boss shook his head. That's a dreamscape that's similar to a parallel world with my current power. I can only see so much. Is Gu Qingshan in danger? Lola worriedly asked. Don't worry. This is his technique. If he dies, this technique will collapse and he and the monster will return to where we are, Boss replied. Everyone exchanged glances. Yi Fei Li took out the Forgetting River Soul flaying hook. Jang Young-ho began to draw cards. Lola was rummaging through her backpack. We need to make preparations. Boss shook his head and sighed emotionally. It's useless. That monster is too strong. And among the three of you, only Lola has any real understanding of battle. Unfortunately, even Lola doesn't know about battles between deities. Then please quickly tell us what a battle between deities looks like, Yi Fei Li asked with an extremely serious tone. Boss bent down and put his hand on the ground. A battle between mortals is indeed decided by strength. While saying so, His expression appeared to be contemplating something, as if he was sensing something. But in the boundless space vortex, if you run into a deity-like monster, you won't be able to immediately know what it's capable of. As soon as you run into each other, you might end up fighting, because it wants to eat you, and you want to survive. For that reason, a battle between deities can only be decided by a single standard. At this point, Boss's expression changed a bit, as if realizing something, and appeared hesitant. After a while, when Boss still didn't say anything, Jang Young-ho also couldn't help but ask, "How exactly do you judge a battle?" Boss glanced at him and replied, "Don't judge it by strength, judge it by who can survive." Saying so, he closed his eyes and muttered, "Right now, I have no choice but to risk my life. Fortunately, this place is still a part of the Abyss. Even though it was separated by the 7 deities, it still belongs to the Abyss. Gu Qing-shan did a good job. There aren't any monsters here to disturb me, so I can do it." Boss rambled on and suddenly yelled, "You're dead. Descend." Boom! The entire garden began to tremble intensely. About 10 seconds later, the void of space abruptly broke apart. The grass below everyone's feet, the fountain, the lush trees, as well as the entire garden all disappeared without a trace. Everyone couldn't help but hover in the void of space. "What happened?" Lola asked in surprise. "It's nothing. I allowed the Abyss to sense this part of its body, so it summoned it back." Boss reached his hand into the void of space and took out a cluster of resplendent blue light. The Abyss is currently being corroded by the parallel world apocalypse, so for it to be able to summon a part of its body back would be a great relief to it, and so the Abyss gave me this reward. Everyone turned to look at his hand. That cluster of blue light seemed to contain boundless mysteries, so much so that anyone who saw it couldn't help but be mesmerized by it, unable to look away. As they looked carefully, they saw that this cluster of blue light was actually a small, glowing insect with a pair of transparent wings, as thin as a cicada's, a fat body that looked a bit cute. The insect's body was giving off waves of blue light that grew brighter and brighter. "How beautiful! What exactly is this?" Lola exclaimed. The star firefly, a causality life form. It doesn't have any power, nor does it know how to fight, so its only function is to look good? Yifei Li asked. Boss couldn't help but chuckle. "Don't underestimate this firefly. It can forcefully choose any other life form to die with it through its own death. For it to activate this ability, there must be a cause, and that is my death." Boss flipped his hand and put the speck of starlight away. "So you've already resolved to die in battle?" Zhang Youngho asked in a low voice. "Of course, with our current strength, we can't win against that monster," Boss casually replied. "Rather than everyone dying, it's better for me to die alone." Everyone stared at him in a daze, feeling touched in their hearts. "Woo woo woo woo, Boss, don't die." Lola couldn't help but cry. Zhang Youngho and Yifei Li were also a bit speechless. Yifei Li's eyes were a bit red. Zhang Youngho was clenching his fist tightly. Seeing everyone's reaction, Boss felt a bit embarrassed. Indeed, it's been a bit tough lately. When he was heavily wounded and his strength was completely gone, there were a lot of things he couldn't do. But this time, the monster was led away by Gu Qing-shan, so I spent over a dozen seconds to summon the will of the Abyss and obtain the Star Firefly. With this thing, I've gained a bit more confidence. So I'll have to say something. Boss cleared his throat and explained to the three of them. "About that, my death is different from what you're thinking. If I die, make sure to take care of my corpse. I'll be revived by the power of the Abyss after a while." "What?" Lola, Zhang Youngho, and Yifei Li all exclaimed in shock. They quickly thought of something. "That's right. There can only be a single entity that can revive after death through hibernation. An abyssal monster. Could it be Boss is an abyssal monster?" As soon as this thought popped up, the three of them were shocked. They began to panic. I can't tell if he's bragging or not this time." Laura mustered up her courage and stammered. "BBBB Boss. Wait a minute, Lola, didn't you?" And Gu Qing-shan saving together? You don't even know his true identity? Jang Young-ho was a bit annoyed. That's true, but I always thought he was a person with a tragic past, Lola pitifully said. Yi Fei waved her hand dismissively. No matter what, he still stood up for us, so there's no need to care about his identity. Fool, we just want to know the truth. Lola and Jang Young-ho spoke at the same time. Seeing their reactions, Boss sighed. And here I thought that aside from Guqing Shan, the rest of you also noticed, but it seems I was overthinking actually, to be honest. I'm the king of the abyss. Chapter 1088. Since the beginning of time, for a single living being, or rather for a self-aware individual, knowing what they are had always been an eternal question. And every time he used "see you once again," he would only receive a single answer. There were only 3 minutes left. So Guqing Shan decided to ask that question. What exactly are you? The vertical pupil on the shield fell into confusion, not knowing where to start. I am. It paused briefly, then slowly continued. I was born in the occultism land, a place extremely far away from this place, ever since I was born several 100 million years ago. Guqing Shan scowled. There's so much that could be said around the question of what am I? How could 3 minutes be enough? If I want to obtain more information, I have to. Guqing Shan's eyes met the vertical pupil. Inside the parallel world illusory dream, he attempted to use his iris technique again. This was a technique within a technique. Lines of bright red text appeared on the war god UI, frowny face warning. Your world technique has yet to be fully constructed, unable to endure both illusory dream and temporal recollection at the same time. If you forcefully perform a technique within a technique, your eyes will receive a certain amount of damage, temporarily unable to perform any other iris technique until your injuries have fully recovered. Guqing Shan quickly skimmed through everything. The illusory dream technique was basically a technique that allowed him to enter a parallel world where everything and everyone in this world perfectly aligned with reality, making it impossible to tell that this was a dream. He created an illusory parallel world and dragged the monster into this parallel world. There is only a single ring of the god of life, and only Guqing Shan herself could survive. That was why the monster still managed to kill Jang Young-ho and the boss's group. However, all of this happened in the dream of a parallel world, while in the real world, his companions survived. Guqing Shan's plan was to first use illusory dream, then think of a way to use "see you once again," and then use memory recollection to thoroughly understand everything about the monster. The time reversal technique was an eye technique that he had already mastered. He had once used this technique on Lin, allowing him to see Lin's past and see what happened when Lin first entered the abyss. Not long ago, when he was in the forest of corpse pillars, he had also used time reversal to see the past of the void gods devouring mythical creatures. 3 techniques, one after the other. The battle was finally over. But the very last step, the war god UI, had reminded me that using time recollection would cause me harm. Guqing Shan sighed unwillingly and made up her mind. This was their only chance to gather information about the monster. If they gave it up, they wouldn't be able to find a way to defeat the monster. Guqing Shan's eyes met the vertical pupils. Time reversal, activate. In an instant, the fountain, the trees, the corpses on the ground, and even the entire garden disappeared from Guqing Shan's sight. The whole world faded away from him. As far as the eye could see, there was nothing but emptiness. The next moment, all the blankness disappeared. Darkness filled Guqing Shan's vision. A certain voice resounded. Everything is about to be destroyed. Weaklings, run away. You will not be able to participate in the final battle following that. Guqing Shan saw a black glow. This black glow gave him a familiar feeling. Right, this was the same spirit. The occultism spirit that ate the mermaid in the garden. The black glow went through everything, entered the space vortex, and began its endless escape. At this point, it had only just gained sentience, so it didn't understand anything. But the feeling of death and destruction behind, it urged it to use all of its strength to escape from that place. From then on, this black, glowing occultism spirit wandered through the space vortex. Whenever it felt tired, it would look for some floating corpses and hide in the shadows of those corpses to rest. When it was hungry, it would eat the monsters that wandered the space vortex. Most of the time, the occultism spirit would be able to devour their flesh and soul before they even noticed anything. A long period of time passed. During this period of time, the occultism spirit had subconsciously, tirelessly, and continuously escaped without stopping. Escaping from the place where it was born, many battles occurred along the way. Most of the time, it would be able to easily defeat its opponents. But occasionally, it would also lose. And whenever that happened, the occultism spirit would use its speed to escape with everything it had. Each and every one of these shocking battles was an eye-opener for Gu Shan. This was a method of fighting that belonged to void monsters that he had never seen before, as well as the ones that left the deepest impression in the occultism spirit's memory. So Gu Shan naturally learned a lot from watching them. This was a battle between deities. How could a mortal ever have the chance to witness such a thing? Gu Shan continued watching. He quickly noticed a few battles. In each of these battles, the occultism spirit was forced to flee. Gu Shan silently memorized the details of those battles. Time quickly passed, when the technique was about to end. Lines of glowing text appeared in the void of space. Frowny face using two world techniques at the same time has exceeded the limit of your endurance. The world that you created has been damaged to a certain degree. For the next period of time, you cannot use your world technique again, otherwise, the world that you created will collapse. Attention, there are 30 seconds left until the world technique ends. After reading through all that, Gu Shan's body moved and slowly disappeared into the void of space. There wasn't much time left, so he needed to return to reality to make some preparations. Only the occultism spirit remained. Where's that person? The occultism spirit only felt that after it finished eating, the person in front of it suddenly disappeared without a trace. The vertical pupil on the shield quickly scanned through the entire garden. Seemingly thinking of something, the vertical pupil controlled the headless corpse to fly into the sky, broke through the world barrier, and quickly left the garden. It stood in the void of space, looking around. Within the chaotic and endless void of space, other than darkness, there was only a bit of light and wind. This place was the space vortex. That's right. The occultism spirit could even see the faint figures of a few worlds. Indeed, it remembered that these figures were all near the garden ruins. Everything was fine, but where exactly did that brat run off to? At another location. Reality. Gu Shan suddenly regained his senses. He found himself being supported by Zhang Yongho and Yi Fei Li, hovering in the middle of the dark void. What happened? Gu Shan immediately asked. Boss briefly explained, I've already returned the garden to the abyss, so there's only nothingness left here. Where's that monster? Gu Shan replied, It'll appear in about 20 seconds. Boss held the star firefly in his hand and said, Leave it to me. All you need to do is watch over my corpse. Take it down with you? No need, Gu Shan replied. He turned to Yi Fei Li. There's still about a dozen seconds left. You and I will be able to deal with it. How is that possible? Everyone exclaimed in shock. Yi Fei Li regained her composure and asked, What do we need to do now? Gu Shan quickly explained, Listen, that monster has attached itself to the body of the dead and the soul of the dead, using a spell to protect itself so that it can't be killed. When it appears, you and I will lock it down. You take the soul, I'll kill the dead and the soul, then I'll kill it. Yi Fei Li seriously listened and asked, Can you confirm where it will appear? In front of me. All right, the plan was set. Yi Fei Li drew the Forgetting River Soul flaying hook. Gu Shan held the Six Paths Great Mountain Sword in one hand and the Devil King Warden Rod in the other. 5 seconds left. Get ready, Gu Shan said. Yi Fei Li held his breath and entered combat mode. Gu Shan also became serious. For some reason, at this crucial moment, An irrelevant thought suddenly popped up in his mind. The Six Paths Great Mountain Sword, the Forgetting River Soul, Flaying Hook, the Devil King Warden Rod. These are the three divine armaments of Huang Quan. Using the power of these three divine armaments, they were able to surpass the level of mortals and deities to ambush and kill a terrifying entity like the occultism spirit. Then just how strong is the real Six Paths reincarnation? Chapter 1089. 3, 2, 1. The Parallel Dream. Spell ended. The occultism spirit had just returned to the garden from the void of space, preparing to look for that insect that knows how to cook. All of a sudden, a sharp howl resounded by its ears. It was Yifei Li's soul-hooking voice. "Oh no!" The occultism spirit exclaimed in shock. It wanted to react to this howl, but since it wasn't prepared at all, it was already affected. The monster's soul froze for a split second. At this point, a hand reached out, not too early, not too late, and lightly tapped its body. Someone whispered, "You've awakened. Guqing Shan, lightning thaumaturgy, dream jolt." The monster was completely immobilized. It fearfully noticed that the trees, the fountain, the grass, the flowers, everything in front of it was slowly turning into nothingness. The garden was disappearing. Even the space vortex was disappearing. The headless mermaid corpse raised its shield and returned to the void of space. The vertical pupil on the shield opened wide. What's going on? Those people who were killed by it were still alive. The vertical pupil was trembling, but couldn't move at all. If it could, it wanted to scream. That's impossible. The flesh and souls of these people had all been devoured by him. Why are they still alive? These people were standing in a circle around it, cautiously watching out for its every move. A long hook suddenly stretched out, pressed against the pupil shield, and forcefully pulled it back. "It's out!" Yifei Li shouted. The long hook flew out of the vertical pupil shield with a translucent gray meatball. Guqing Shan didn't say anything and stabbed the Devil King Warden Rod into the gray mass of flesh. Soul dispersion activated. The Devil King Warden Rod lightly moved, giving off the sound of chewing. The gray mass of flesh was visibly shrinking, but no one had any expressions of joy on their faces. This monster was too eerie. According to Guqing Shan, this mixture of souls and flesh wasn't the monster's true body. It's just attached to the mass. Therefore, most of the time, its enemies thought that killing this thing would be the end of it. Little did they know that it was only using a spell to control this mixture of soul and flesh. The real one was waiting for an opportunity to strike. More often than not, this was the time for the occultism spirit to retaliate and kill its enemies. But this time, things were different. Thanks to her two-world techniques, Guqing Shan has already seen all of its battles. It had no chance. Guqing Shan raised the Six Paths Great Mountain Sword. Secret art, Full Moon Slash. A moon-white sword light lit up in the dark void. Following that, the 30 crescent moons joined together to form a full moon. The full moon enveloped the mixture of soul and flesh within it. Slash. The autumn water-like longsword flashed and disappeared. In the void, something seemed to have been broken. This was the occultism spirit's protective spell technique. Against Shanu's Lawbreaker, its defensive technique was destroyed. An ear-piercing scream resounded through the void, echoing in every direction. In a split second, a black figure jumped out from the full moon, lightly leapt forward and escaped from their encirclement. "Ents, I won't let you go." The monster was clearly injured, and its voice was filled with hatred and resentment. Boss raised his voice. "Don't let it get away." Guqing Shan didn't say anything. On the War God UI, he looked at the War God title option, then replaced Shunwei General, which increased attack speed with Starflame War God. Starflame War God was a mystic-type causality ability. Guqing Shan turned her gaze towards the faraway black figure that was about to disappear from her sight. Her inner sight lightly moved. Title skill, Conquer, activate. Instantly, the black shadow flew back with a whoosh. "Ahahaha, you destroy my soul and flesh? That's great. I'm finally no longer bound by the god of life's oath. I'm going to kill you." The black figure smirked. "Ants die." It charged straight at Gu Shan. The black figure was too fast. When Gu Shan noticed it, it was already in front of Gu Shan. Gu Shan only had enough time to block. Block. Gu Shan suddenly shouted in anger, "Die." In a split second, his bloodlust was ignited. He completely gave up on defending. He let go of the Six Paths' great mountain sword and drew another sword from the void of space. The sword stabbed forward. Secret art, Swallow returns. "No, why can't I enter your soul?" The black figure was struck, screaming in pain as it retreated, under the immense force of impact. Even Gu Shan couldn't help but take a few steps back. He glanced at the notification. "You've received the praise of the winds of chaotic tribulation and the praise of eternal night's protection, negating one of the enemy's attacks. Remaining usage, 2. Recovery time, 3 days." Gu Shan sighed in relief. Even though he was prepared, he still couldn't help but feel fearful at the moment of life and death. He looked in front of him. The black figure was struck by a sword, but as it retreated, it was struck by another sword manifested by Swallow Returns. After being struck twice, the black figure stopped moving. "That's impossible. You're nothing but an ant, my food." The black figure muttered in despair and unwillingness. Gu Shan shook her head and replied, "You were born stronger than countless living beings, but your pride stopped you from doing one thing. That's why you ended up like this. What is it?" The black figure asked. Gu Shan put the earth sword away, recalled the black figure's life, and replied, "You have such a long life, but the only thing you know is to eat, not to become stronger. That's why you lost." The black figure fell silent. For countless years, no one had ever been able to kill it. But today it died without any dignity in front of an ant. It couldn't say anything else. Its body slowly faded away. It couldn't say anything else. It was dead. Died to the Earth's sword's thaumaturgy. Earth's choice. Earth's choice. Slay all entities. The stronger the target you wish to slay, the more soul points. Earth's choice. Gu Shan checked his remaining soul points. Empty. The soul points needed to kill this monster haven't appeared yet. The war god UI seemed to be confirming something. Gu Shan shook his head and sighed. Intense exhaustion surged through him, causing him to sigh. From the start of the battle, he had used Parallel Dream, Performance, See You Again, Time Recollection, Dream Jolt, War God Title, Shunwei General, Crescent / Advanced Secret Art, Full Moon / Soul Dispersion, from the Devil King Warden Rod, Lawbreaker from the Six Paths Great Mountain Sword, War God Title, Starflame War God, Praise of the Divine Armor, Swallow Returns, Earth Swords Earth's Choice, as well as Yifei Li's Soul Suppressing and Soul Flaying, to kill the monster. In such a short period of time, he had exhausted all of his means and thoughts, only to achieve victory at the very last second. Because of that, even someone like Gu Shan felt a bit exhausted. Boss praised, "If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed that a mortal killing a deity would actually happen." He put away the star firefly in his hand. Yifei Li closed her eyes and stood still. "What's the matter?" Gu Shan asked. "My chaos UI is communicating with me, saying that I participated in killing a deity and will soon receive the power of chaos as a reward," Yifei Li said with a look of excitement on his face. Gu Shan was surprised. He looked at the void of space in front of him. Lines of glowing text were rapidly scrolling past the war god UI. Frowny face, you've completed a cross-dire kill. You've killed the occultism mythical creature, parasite of flesh and soul, larva. Although you have the identity of an earth god, you are currently still immortal. You've already killed the mythical creature of chaos, gloomy devourer of corpse god, so this is your second cross-dire kill. As you've completed 2 extremely rare battles, you've obtained the following opportunities. You may have the war god UI devour your unique title, Enemy of Chaos, Primary, to obtain information about another unique title. Please pay special attention. This title has the suffix of war god. Gu Shan's expression changed a bit. The last sentence was very obvious, and Gu Qing wasn't an idiot, so he naturally understood the meaning behind it. He couldn't help but ask again, is it a title on the same level as Starflame War God? The system didn't answer. Silence, perhaps, was tacit agreement. Gu Qing fell into thought. Starflame War God's title skill Conquer was truly impressive. Any enemy targeted by this ability would be forced to attack it for a certain reason. This was a mystic-type skill, as well as a causality skill that couldn't be exempted. It was thanks to this causality skill that the monster couldn't escape just now. If I can obtain information about a title on the same level as Starflame War God. With that in mind, Gu Qing didn't hesitate and said, I choose to devour, enemy of chaos. Please give me that information. Lines of glowing text continue to appear on the War God UI. Frowny face your title. Enemy of chaos, primary, has been devoured. You will obtain the corresponding information about the following title, Void War God, that you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.